The tariffs are scaring the crap out of the stock market, and the stock market's down. I was explaining to her how someday I'm going to be a millionaire, and we went across a railroad track and the muffler fell off my car. By the time we were 26, we had about $4 million of real estate and a little over $1 million net worth. And
by 26, you had $4 million in real estate?
Made $250K that year. So by the time I'm 28, I'm bankrupt. Made $250K one year, and the next year I made $6,000. When I was doing really good is when I met God. I met him on the way up, but got to know him on the way down. It's harder to get on with us than it is the CIA or the FBI. I don't own the business. God owns it.
Dave Ramsey, welcome to the show.
I'm so honored to be here. Thank you, my friend.
My pleasure. Well, I'm honored to have you, and been trying to make this happen for quite some time, and it's just, it's awesome to have you here. We've got a lot to talk about.
Kind of ridiculous it was so much trouble because I'm just right there.
I know. I know you're literally right down the street.
Stupid schedules, yours and mine. But yeah, here we are.
Here we are. But, I don't even know where to put this in the interview. So you've been a mentor of mine since way before we ever met. And I was doing a contract, anti-piracy stuff off the coast of Yemen. And my dad had given me your book and wanted me to read it. And I kind of skimmed through it and I was like, I get it. Get out of debt, whatever. I don't need to read this stuff. But I didn't have anything to do on that damn ship other than possibly shoot some pirates. And so I dug in, and I'm not a big reader. I just don't enjoy it. And I read your book from front to back in about a day and a half, and I was just glued to it. Totally changed my life.
Wow.
And I was making pretty good money back then contracting, but I was spending it all on bullshit. I bought like a $30,000 chopper and all kinds of BMW, all kinds of shit that I didn't need. And I read that book on that little deployment. It was about 3 weeks long. Came back home, sold everything I had, paid all my debt off.
No way.
Yep. And I've lived like that. Paid my house off, sold everything, all the shit that I didn't need that I had loans on, and had, I guess, equity and some of it. And
so what the switch flip? You realize it's not giving you joy. It's not.
Yeah,
the stress of the debt didn't offset the fun of the
exactly.
stuff. Yeah.
And then, I was hesitant, but because I really liked my motorcycle and I really liked my BMW at the time, but the peace and the freedom that came from getting rid of my mortgage payment, my credit card debt, and all the other shit, car payments, that was probably 15, 16 years ago, and I've just lived like that ever since.
Wow.
And even today, I'm debt free. I built my business, never took on debt, only grew as much as what I could afford at the time. And now we're building, we went from the attic of my house to this. Now we're building a 7,000 square foot studio out in the woods, and all of it, there's zero debt. And so I just want to say thank you.
Well, thank you. That's a great story. I didn't know that part.
Yeah.
I've been friends for a while. I never heard that part. That's
yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Well, and then, you continue to be a mentor of mine, and we had a discussion at your house, a couple months ago, and I was looking for a CEO and wanted to get your advice on that. And you told me, don't get a CEO. You have to be the CEO. And I think you mentioned you're probably looking more for a COO. And you just met Eric downstairs. This is the beginning of his third week.
Oh, wow.
So I wound up hiring a COO.
Okay.
And so I just want you to know that, everything you say, I take it in, and I know a lot of people do. And so this, what I've built here is, somewhat of a product of your mentorship.
Wow.
So.
And I didn't even know. Wow, that's very cool.
Well, now you know.
That's neat.
Now you know. But yeah, so everybody starts with an introduction here. So here we go. Dave Ramsey, You're a legend in the personal finance world who's helped millions climb out of debt and take control of their money. You're the host of the Ramsey Show, a nationally syndicated radio program that's been teaching money management for over 30 years. You're an 8-time best-selling author, including Total Money Makeover, the book that changed my life. Your newest book, Build a Business You Love, is set to release on April 15th, tax day. Is that an accident?
Who knows? Seemed like it was a good day. I don't know.
You're the founder and CEO of Ramsey Solutions, a company that's all about giving people hope through practical, no-nonsense financial advice. You were introduced into the National Radio Hall of Fame in 2015. You've been a husband to Sharon for the last 43 years. You raised 3 children together, and most importantly, out of everything I mentioned, you are a Christian.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm sure I'm missing a ton there, but 43 years.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So let's kick it off. What's the secret to a successful marriage?
Whoa. Well, the joke that I always use, which is accurate, I tell her if she leaves, I'm going with her. So, and then she just giggles. But the truth is, I met God about 2 years after we were married. And she probably we still wouldn't be married if I hadn't. Because the guy that she married was a twerp. He's a hell-raising, beer-drinking hillbilly with a big temper and wasn't much of a man, much less much of a husband. But he's a good salesman because I talked her into marrying me. But thank God she's not still married to the same guy, that his life has been transformed by Christ. And so every year a little better, every year a little less dumb, every year a little whatever. It's nothing perfect, obviously, but we've both grown in our faith and in our relationship steadily over those years, and went through hell losing everything in our early days. And, that was a defining moment in relationship and everything else. But, I'm not the same dad I was when I started. I'm not the same husband I was when I started. I'm not the same man I was. I'm not the same leader I was when I started. Thank goodness. Good Lord. Who would want to just sit in the same poop all the time and not change anything, right? I mean, you gotta change. You gotta get better. And the thing that has impacted that is just, trying to figure out how to do those things. And the instruction manual I used was the Bible. So, because I didn't know anything else. So, but I was pretty much a wild animal.
Really?
Yeah.
I can't see that with you.
Well, it's a long time ago.
But, so you didn't grow up
No.
going to church, Christianity, none of that?
None, no. It's in my heritage. My great-grandfather was a circuit riding preacher and this kind of stuff, but got his old Bible from the 1800s. That's pretty cool keepsake. But but my parents were just, they weren't particularly angry about it or anything. We just didn't go. And the people we ran around with weren't church people necessarily, or Christians of any kind. If you asked them, they would have said they were. Mm-hmm. But I mean, we weren't, I don't remember. My grandmother, when I was like 9, they were in church. She paid me $10 to memorize the Lord's Prayer. And that's the closest I've ever come to, and if we went to her house, we went to church.
Wow.
But hated it. Didn't want to go. I mean, little kids getting all dressed up and not being able to squirm and yell and whatever, and miserable. And but that was 10 times in my life, maybe. But no, I didn't know anything. I was just a character.
Where did you grow up?
Just over the tracks over here in Antioch, Tennessee.
Antioch, Tennessee.
Yeah.
What were you into? What was it like growing up?
It was nowadays it's a very international community. Mm-hmm. But in those days it was just suburbanites and just redneck kids. I mean, we were just hillbillies, and most of our parents had grown up on the farm and had moved to town to take a job or something, and so they bought all these little some nice little suburban homes, and it was a little suburbia, Leave It to Beaver. And but I mean, this was a neighborhood where it's blue collar, maybe some white collar, but I mean, it's a different world a long time ago. You know? But it was a neighborhood where little boys got in fights and big boys got in fights, and it wasn't like we have anything today. You wouldn't even. I can't think of one of my grandkids being in that situation today at all. But it was it wasn't horrible, but it was just tough neighborhood.
What did your parents do?
A real estate business.
The real estate business.
Owned a residential real estate company there in the Harding Mall area, and so I got my real estate license 3 weeks after I turned 18. That's what I was going to do. I was going to be a big real estate guy.
Were they successful realtors?
Yeah. They were in it for many, many years. They did finally close it in one of the downturns, and went on to other stuff. But I guess they were in it for probably 10 or 15 years. Most of my, growing up years, that's what they did. And so that was the good news, because they're very entrepreneurial, and taught us. Took us to sales conferences, and so we were, I'm sitting in conference 12 years old listening to Zig Ziglar, and talking about attitude, and I'm like, yeah, okay. But I learned to sell early, and I grew up in a salesman's household. So there's a lot of wonderful qualities come out of that, and also you get grit, out of a situation like that. You learn how to deal with a bully. You learn how to deal with not back down on everything that comes at you, and so it's a little.
Yeah, different. I think that's some good lessons that seems like we're starting to lose these days.
Yeah, I mean, you can learn them without them necessarily being that environment, but yeah, it's something that moms and dads, we have to be really intentional with our kids, to let them fail, let them get a bump, let them develop some grit, some character, some courage. How do you handle a high intensity conflict situation? And not something like you've done. I don't mean that, but I mean just in business. If you just got somebody that's going to bow up, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You're just going to walk away every time. Well, sometimes walking away is a good idea, but sometimes metaphorically busting them in the nose is a real good idea too.
Interesting. So with you growing up like that, and then you've built like this massive business, how did you teach your kids grit, courage, stick with it, stand up what you believe in? Well, totally different environment.
Yeah, it is. But we just, again, we in our house, we were doing it through the lens of Scripture, through the lens of, the perseverance matters, rejoice in your suffering, because suffering produces perseverance, and perseverance, character, and character, hope. And so perseverance means you're engaged in something that is uncomfortable and there's friction oriented. And so put them in some situations like that. And so not with anger or not anything like that, but it's like, don't helicopter them out of every little thing. Let them flop around in it a little bit, and then talk about, okay, what would Christ do? How do we handle this? What's the tough aspect of this? What's the compassionate aspect of this? And what'd you learn? And what was God talking to you about while you were sitting there in that thing? And you're dealing with this teacher that's a jerk. You're dealing with a situation, a social situation or whatever, as your teenager, all that kind of stuff. And so, we just walk through all that. As far as working around the business and stuff, anytime we're doing anything, one of the things we grew up with too was hard work ethic. I mean, you just work. Mm-hmm. When in doubt, just go to work. Shut up. Just go leave the cave, kill something, drag it home. I mean, something needs to move. And so we taught them that. And if you're going to work around Ramsey and you're a 12-year-old working the book table or shipping department or whatever, you got to work twice as hard, 3 times as hard as everybody else. And you got to be 3 times as cheerful as everybody else, and kind as everybody else, and strong as everybody else, because otherwise you're not going to be respected. They're going to assume you're a wussy little boss's kid that's worthless. And so our kids, it was like they were coaches' kids. We were tough on them around the business. And so, my middle daughter Rachel was working the book table and one of the events, and one of my guys, that was one of my leaders, looked over and saw her goofing off, looking on her phone, and they're like, "You don't do that here." And he corrected her, and she's like, she tells that story, and that's good. That's exactly the environment we wanted to put them in. So, those things are the building blocks of having a high quality life. So you got to put them in there. It's a big deal.
Part of the reason I do what I do is for my family. I want to leave them a better country than the one I was born into. I also want to make sure they are taken care of financially, and that's why I make it a priority to help protect the money I've worked so hard to earn and save. And one of the ways I do that is by diversifying into gold and silver. Precious metals have been a store of value for thousands of years, and they are known as a hedge against market risk and inflation. If you're interested in learning about how precious metals can help you, you should reach out to my partners at Goldco. They're an amazing company, they support this show, and I trust them. Right now, they're offering a free gold and silver kit. All you have to do is go to ShawnLikesGold.com. You'll also learn about a special offer to get up to a 10% instant match and bonus silver for qualified orders. So go to ShawnLikesGold.com. That's ShawnLikesGold.com. SHAWN likesgold.com. Make sure you do everything in your power to help protect what's yours. With everything that's happening in the economy, it feels like we're all walking on shaky ground. Prices are high, and it seems like nothing is affordable anymore. It's no wonder many are relying on credit cards to cover the gaps. Credit card debt is skyrocketing, and it's leaving a lot of people stressed out. If you're a homeowner, you don't have to face this uncertainty alone. My friends at American Financing can help you take control. They can help you access the equity in your home to help you pay down that high-interest credit card debt, giving you peace of mind and real savings. On average, people just like you are saving $800 a month. Plus, they may close your loan in as little as 10 days. Don't let the chaos of the economy get the best of you. Call American Financing now. It costs you nothing to get started, and you may delay 2 mortgage payments, giving you a cushion in this uncertain time. Call 866-781-8900. That's 866-781-8900, or go to americanfinancing.net/SRS. When did you grew up with an entrepreneurial spirit? When was your first business?
12.
12 years old.
Yeah, I told Daddy, I said, I want to go down to the Quick Sack and get an icy. I need some money. He said, you don't need money, you need a job. He said, your lawnmower's in the basement, go knock on the closest 50 doors. And I said, I don't know. He goes, hey, get in the car. And he took me down on Nolensville Road over here, little print shop, printed up 500 business cards, said Dave's Lawns. I said, Dad, that's a little overkill. I just wanted an icy. So he came home and he said, go knock on the closest 50 doors and ask them if you can have the opportunity to provide their lawn care needs. Don't look at your feet and say, while you're standing on the man's front porch, and say, you don't want me to cut your grass, do you? You go in there and you throw your shoulders back and you smile and you give them service and they'll hire you. And dadgum, it didn't work. I had 27 yards to cut at 12 years old.
No kidding.
Which, I think it's called child abuse now, but,
yeah.
But it made me keep a profit and loss statement on my business. My income minus his lawnmowers I tore up equals net profit. But, it was, and I loved it. Because I always kind of been a little business nerd, I guess. And so I'm cutting Slugger Carnahan's yard for $3, and my buddies are working at Burger King Whopper Floppers. And, they're making this is 70s, right? So they're making $1.25 an hour. So I'm figuring, all right, I got to cut this grass in faster than 2 hours, or I'm making only what they're making.
No kidding.
And so
you were thinking like that already.
While I'm mowing, I'm like looking at my watch, going, I gotta get these dollar per hour. I gotta make this work. And that's how I priced the yards out, so I could make more. I wanted to try to make about double what my buddies were making if they were flopping whoppers at minimum wage. And if I'm gonna sweat like that, I need to make some money.
Wow. So 12 years old, you're going. That taught you confidence. That taught you responsibility, business. You're already thinking,
interacting with adults, and acting like you have your crap together.
How long did that last?
I guess the rest of my life. Oh, the yards?
Yeah, the yards.
Oh, man, I cut enough grass by the time I was 18. God said I never had to do it again. So, I ain't cutting grass in a long, long time. Oh, man. Yeah. No, I when I took off to college, when I got up into high school, I started doing home repairs too, because they would buy an old house and fix it up, and they'd put me in there to fix it up, or one of their buddies would buy a house in the real estate business and put me in there, 16 years old, to paint it and change the dishwasher out and that kind of stuff. So I did all that. That's how I paid cash for my first car, doing that, and then it's how I actually paid for the first couple semesters of college, just working my butt off, swinging a hammer and turning a screwdriver.
No kidding. Did your dad instigate that, or?
Oh yeah, he could do it. He could fix it. That neighborhood we were in, everybody had tool belt. Everybody could fix anything, and so you didn't throw stuff away in those days. You had it repaired or you fixed it. Today our stuff's throwaway. We don't send there's no television repair shops in today, but in the old days, you'd send it over there, they'd put a new tube in it or something, or we would take it apart and look at it and see if we could figure it out. And so, yeah, those guys all turned a wrench on their own cars. So we all learned to turn a wrench on a car, and that, it's a wonderful heritage to have. It's not necessary to be successful, but it's, I'm not uncomfortable. I remember when I was taking my wife out on a date in college, I think it was about our third or fourth date. I think I had $1.16 in my checking account. I was so broke I couldn't pay attention, and I had a 1974 Monte Carlo that I was on the third engine and the second transmission, and I had changed them. I'd run the wheels off that car, and it had 200-something thousand miles on it. It was a piece of crap. And I was explaining to her how someday I'm going to be a millionaire. And we went across the railroad track, and the muffler fell off my car. But I had a Craftsman toolbox in the trunk with a towel to lay on and a towel to pick the muffler up and a 9/16 wrench to run the U-bolt up, and it had fallen off before, so I knew how to fix it, and just rolled up under there, fixed it, and dusted my hands off. When we went on the date, she's like, "You just fixed the car and got back in right after you tell me you're going to be a millionaire?" Yeah, okay. She thought I was full of crap because I was.
What, just like we were talking about before the interview, I mean, I got 2 little kids, and I really want them to become entrepreneurs. I see I'm experiencing the freedom that you get, and with that being said, it takes a tremendous amount of self-drive and as you said earlier, perseverance, I think your kids entrepreneurs? Mm-hmm. So what age did you start instilling that into them?
Well, I just, sometimes people get, from a job working for someone else, the illusion, and it is a delusion or an illusion, that somehow that's safe. And if you've ever been on the other side of that table where you're actually the guy making the payroll, they're not safe, because you got to run this whole thing right, or oh my God, you can't pay them. But they're under the illusion that this stuff's automatic because they just get their check on Friday and everything's okay. And so the first thing we did was break that illusion with the kids, is that, your success is not dependent on plugging into some safety mechanism somewhere. Your safety mechanism is your ability. Your safety mechanism is your skill set, your safety mechanism. And so even if you're working for someone else, you're self-employed, you just have one client. And you need to go, okay, if I'm an architect and I lost that job, I wasn't leaning on that particular firm for my future, my life, the quality of my life. I was leaning on my skills as an architect. And so if you're going to do that, do it in such a way that you're always marketable, and that but you view it as I'm dependent on me. I'm self-dependent. And then what that does automatically leads you into wanting to run your own thing. You know, you don't want to work for somebody else, because you want to go, you know, I will take the risk of, I will accept the fact that there is risk. I'm not delusional about it, and I'm going to just do it anyway. And so, entrepreneurs don't necessarily have to start something from the ground up. My kids haven't. They've come into Ramsey and, you know, are the next generation of leaders and owners of that organization. And all three of them are very capable, very different personality styles, very different approach to that. But they're just not under the illusion that someone else is going to do it for them, or that their success is dependent or entitled, or it's none of that. It's sowing and reaping.
What age did that start? And how did you instill that into them? How did you show them?
Well, you want to be age appropriate. I mean, you've got babies, so don't send them to the salt mines. That's not what we're talking about. But you know, it's 3 or 4 years old, we start to go, okay, there's consequences and cause and effect going on. Again, Bible talks about sowing and reaping. You're going to reap what you sow. And so, as quickly as we could, we started teaching them 3 or 4 things about money, which were life lessons that we back into this conversation. It's like all kids need to age appropriately, need to learn to work, to give, so that they're not self-centered, they're other-centered, to save, so they're future-oriented, not just present-oriented, which is emotional maturity, which not going to have much of that at 4, and to spend wisely. So work to make money, then save some, give some, and spend some. And then you get opportunities to teach them and let them fail under your wing. And so, early, it's as simple as, okay, you're 4, your job is to pour the dog food into the dog bowl. Mm-hmm. This is your dog. It's our family dog, but the dog eats because you put the food in there. And when you do that, you get $1. Or your job is to clean up the toys in your room, which when you're 4 usually means mom and dad clean up 80% of them, and we make a game out of it, and we sing songs. But you're the best room cleaner in the world. I've never seen anyone clean a room as good as you clean a room. You're amazing, and here's $1. And then we get some of those dollars together, and we go to the store sometime, and we get something, and that's as a result of you being the best room cleaner in the world. And it all begins with something that primitive and that simple. So it's positive reinforcement, but they're emotionally starting to tie work equals money. Work equals money. Because I meet 50-year-olds that don't know work equals money. Yeah. They haven't figured that out. Nobody ever taught them, and they're still waiting around for somebody else to fix their freaking life. And so I didn't want that. And by the time they're 10 or 12, it starts to get pretty sophisticated. And then we said, okay, we're going to do the money aspect. We said, we got, your car when you turn 16 is your responsibility, but we're going to help. We're going to have 401 Dave. We're going to match. So whatever you save, I'll match it. If you save nothing, get ready for a real nice bicycle. So your little butt's going to be walking, because you're going to pay for your car, but I'm going to whatever you save. Now, I will tell you, you're starting young. Make sure you put a limit on that, because the third one figured it out. Yeah, he had 15 grand. And now I'm looking at buying a $30,000 car for a 16-year-old. Not a chance.
Damn.
So we talked that down, and we worked that out. And he ended up giving some of that to a ministry. And there was an earthquake in Peru about that time. And he'd been down there on a missions trip. And some of the kids down there didn't have anything. So he gave some of that money that. And we matched it, the whole thing anyway. But some of it was generous. And then he bought a real cool Jeep. But it still wasn't $30,000 freaking dollars. But I had to keep my word, because I had set this thing up. So I'm warning the rest of you, make sure you put a limit on it. But we did that on all 3 of them, and they'll tell you to this day that they had great pride, the way they drove the car, the way they took care of the car. Their friends didn't leave crap in the car. You take care of my car. I worked for this. And they did. They worked. They babysat. They cut grass. They worked at the company. They sold books. They did, whatever they at the company. They working for us. Whatever they had to do. But yeah, so it built character and confidence and dignity and responsibility, and all of those things got woven into this little money lesson of you're going to save, 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 you're going to give, you're going to give, you're going to be other-centered, not just self-centered. This whole access to the world doesn't run through the top of your little head. It ain't about you, baby. And so we're going to be selfless, not selfish. And we just talked about that, like, I guess, all the time. And they probably got sick of it, but they turned out, so it's okay.
Man, that's great advice. And so you were a real estate agent at age 18?
Mm-hmm.
How did that start?
Well, I turned 18 and passed my real estate test like 2 weeks later. And I sold a house like 3 weeks later, which who buys a house from an 18-year-old? What kind of, but I talked some guy into it, a guy from high school. $42,750 on East Ridge Drive off of Haywood Lane, right over here in Antioch. And that house today would be $800,000 probably, But I went off to college, and I was to get a degree in real estate because I wanted to do commercial real estate. Mom and Dad did houses, residential, and I wanted to do big numbers, and I thought I was cool or whatever. And so my goal was to be a big, like a shopping mall guy or whatever, all that stuff. And so. But I moved my license down to East Tennessee and went to the University of Tennessee, and I lived in Maryville is how it's spelled, but over there we call it Merville, Tennessee, and drove back and forth to UT and sold real estate there. And to get through school, I made enough to get through school, and then I graduated from there. And when I got home, I had a couple jobs, and then I ended up working for a home builder, and then I left that and started buying houses and doing flip this house, and that's when I got wealthy.
How many years did it take you from selling houses to buying your first house?
I sold houses all the way through college, and when I got out of college, I went to work for a home builder selling houses, and I worked there like a year.
So how old
I bought my first house probably to flip when I was 22 or 23, something like that, and I flipped it. But there wasn't cable TV to tell you how to flip this house. There wasn't TikTok, and Chip and Joanna hadn't been born. It was not. This was just me going out there digging up a foreclosure deal and talking some banker into loaning me the money because I borrowed money up to my eyeballs, and I was doing flip this house. And so, yeah, we started from nothing, and by the time we were 26, we had about $4 million of real estate and a little over $1 million net worth. And
by 26, you had $4 million in real estate?
Made $250K that year, and that's $1 million now a year. And but I had too much debt, and the bank looked down and said, "There's a child that owes us $1 million," and they were right. And they called our notes, and we spent 2.5 years losing everything. And so by the time I'm 28, I'm bankrupt. Made $250K one year, and the next year I made $6,000. And the odd thing is when I was doing really good is when I met God. I met him on the way up, but got to know him on the way down.
How'd you meet him?
I went to a sales conference and with my beer drinking buddy, and we were so stupid. We would go to happy hour and then go make sales calls and couldn't figure out why people wouldn't buy from us. That's how stupid we were. So, yeah. Anyway, we go to a sales conference, me and him, and we're sitting on the back row up on top, and we're kids. And this guy comes on stage that makes $400K a year. And we're like, I want to be him. So we're like, okay, here's the 5 things I want to learn from him before he came up, because we knew the guy was coming. And he actually used our little questions. He didn't have our questions. We hadn't submitted them, but he somehow answered every one of those questions. So he had credibility before he walked up there. He was a great speaker. And then by the time he read our mail, he owned us. And he said, and there's one more thing. And we're like, no, there's not. We got all. That's it. That's all we got. No, there's one more thing. He said, if you don't know this man named Jesus, you need to get introduced, because it will change the way you do business. You change the way you do relationships, and business is all relationships. You're going to be more successful when you understand how human relationships work, and you will not understand that except through Christ. And my wife had been ragging on me to go to church, and I don't want to go to church. She's like, "We're going to church." I'm like, "Who are you?" We got married, and she remembered she was a Baptist, and so she forgot that prior to marriage. But then she comes home and, no, I'm not going to church. Sundays when we drink beer and watch football. And she would cry and get mad and go out and find her little Baptist people and go to church. And so then I come home from the sales conference, and I'm like, "I think we ought to go to church." And she's like, "Who are you? What you doing with my husband?" And so we went into a couple of churches, and they were boring as crud. And I'm like, if God's here, if he was here, he left, because nobody here is excited about it. And if there's got a God, you got to be excited about it. I mean, come on, hello. And so we go in the back door of this little church over on Old Hickory Boulevard over here, Christ Church. And, you sit on the back row so you can eject in case they get weird, or in case they get, I don't want to talk to people. I'm just here, I'm checking this out, You probably didn't do that, but that's how I did it. I want to be able to eject. And couldn't get away from that place because there's an old school pastor. He'd stand at the back door and shake everybody's hand as they left. Only about 400 people in there. And his wife was a big squishy woman, and she'd give you a big Jesus hug, like grandma hug. And oh man, that woman hugged me into the kingdom. And I'm standing there, and he got up on there. I thought Christians were wusses. That's what I figured. I figured a bunch of sissies, and that's how I grew up. And so this guy stood up, and he was a man. And he's like, "This is what the Bible says, and if you don't agree with that, you're what's known as wrong." And he would call out stuff in the political spectrum and say, "This is morally wrong, our nation," and stuff. And I went, that's right. And he's got like a backbone and stuff. Wow. And, they had this choir up there, and it's a long time ago. I mean, this is 80s, right? So everybody wore a suit to church and all this kind of stuff. In those days, you didn't come in with coffee and shorts and a hat, but nowadays it's what I wear to church. But then you certainly didn't. But there's a woman in the choir starts waving her hand, raising her hand. And I'm like, "Sharon, if they get snakes out, I'm out of here. This is crazy," and it's like, so, yeah. And, somebody said something about the Holy Spirit, and I said, "I don't have any idea what that means." And we just kept coming, and we didn't know what was drawing us back, but we found out later it was the Spirit of God. We could feel it, and it was just attractive. And Sharon was pregnant with our first kid, and we were making money, but Jaguars and Rolexes weren't satisfying. It wasn't enough.
Sorry to
That's
interrupt
okay.
here, but
Fine.
I see, it didn't take me long to figure that out. And but I don't think a lot of people ever figure that out. And I mean, you see it all over social media, the greed and the flash and all that. And I think it actually detours a lot of people from, they think it's unreachable because a lot of it's fake. You get people, I mean, they have businesses now where you can just go rent the jet, not even fly in it, go take a picture in front of the private jet, and you go rent a Lambo or you go rent whatever, and they just put all this shit out on social media. And I think it makes people think that this becomes unreachable. Mm-hmm. And so, when I finally started making money, I bought some dumb shit. I mean, I just talked about, the BMW.
We all did.
Yeah. Chopper, all that kind of stuff. And so I'm just curious, how long did it take you to figure out that possessions don't fulfill you as a person?
I don't know that it was a singular moment. Mm-hmm. It was probably on a gradient, truthfully, because that was my deal. I'm going to go get some stuff. I was in acquisition mode, from 18 to 27, 26. And it worked, by the way. Except it didn't stick because of the principles I used, built a house of cards, but the concept worked of I'm going to go get some stuff, and I went and got some stuff. And but you start to realize pretty quick, it's like, hey, if you eat enough lobster, it tastes like soap. I love lobster, but I never had lobster till I was 12 years old, and Red Lobster came to town. And I thought, man, I'm going to eat all that I can get. I love this, right? But I always just laugh and go, if you get enough of anything, you get enough cars, you get enough suits of clothes, you get enough houses, you get enough, eventually you just go, it's unfulfilling. And it doesn't take a genius to grasp that. And so probably what happened was I started going to church because my wife was dying for me to do that. And I'm sitting there and they're talking about Christ. And they're talking about being, it's not all about you. It's, the first will be last. And those that are happiest are those that serve. And the most fulfilling thing you can do in your life is serve and not gather up another Jaguar or Lambo or whatever, a jet, whatever, chopper, whatever. But so I'm in there for other reasons, but that's gnawing in there also. And so I think probably one of the almost byproducts of a spiritual shift and going, okay, I'm no longer Lord of my life. He is. I'm going to change that. You're in charge. What do you want to do? Because I obviously screwed this up. I went bankrupt. I lost everything. My wife thought she married Sir Galahad. Turns out it was Goober. It's like, obviously I don't have my crap together. So obviously I need a new instruction manual, and I need someone else running my life other than just me, because I'm pretty self-sufficient, but I need some instruction. And so, because when I went broke, I wasn't just broke, I was broken. Mm-hmm. And so you hit that bottom. And then with that, I go, okay, there's nothing wrong with getting you some stuff. Get some nice stuff. I just drove a really nice truck up here today. I mean, I don't mind you having some stuff, but that's not the point. The house you're building is really nice. The house I live in, you've been there, is nice. There's nothing wrong with that. But what's wrong with, where it becomes wrong is if you are asking the stuff to do something it's not capable of, which is give you peace. And only the nail-scarred hands can give you peace that passes understanding. And so that's what I got early, there in my 20s. And then I've been able to rebuild from losing everything over the last 35 years and become much wealthier than I was before, but I don't have any emotional or spiritual attachment to it at all. It's, I got a super expensive sports car and I parked it in front of a burrito place the other night. I went to speak at this church thing, and a kid comes in and he goes, "Hey, is that your car outside?" And I said, "Yeah." I thought he was just admiring the car, and he goes, "I just hit it." It's like, kid, you have no idea what it's going to cost you. Like, I go out there, there's a little ding about like this on the thing, but that's probably, going to be 50 grand or something. It's like, and he's like, I don't know my insurance. My parents are going to kill me. He's like 17 years old. And I'm like, here's what I'll do. I said, I'm going to go over here and puke in the bushes, and you're just going to go home, and we're not going to worry about it. He goes, "You're letting me go?" And I'm like, "You can't do anything about it anyway. It's out of you're over your skis." And I'm not real happy, and I'm not mad at you. And I got home, and Sharon's like laughing at me, and she's like, "Yeah, your problem is you just don't care. You like the car, but you don't love the car. You're not worshiping the car. It's just a fun car." Yeah. And it's a ridiculously cool car, but I'm not attached to it. And so I can just go let the 17-year-old go home and not kill him. And because we're asking those things to do something for us that they're not capable of. Yeah. It's almost like asking your wife or your husband, if you're, married, if you're a lady watching this, to be your Jesus. They're going to fail miserably. Your husband's going to leave his underwear on the floor, and you're going to realize right quick he's not Jesus. There's underwear on the floor. Jesus wouldn't do that. Possibly would, I don't know, but you can't ask things to do things to be God that aren't capable. That's the problem with idol worship. That's the core of it.
When you mentioned that your business mentor, the guy that you saw spoke, said you need to implement Christ in your life, into your business. What did he mean by that?
I think he just was saying your character is changed and you become other-centered rather than self-centered. You become, when you're selling, if you're a taker, the people buying can smell it on you. Mm-hmm. When you're selling, you're serving. Then you're there to help, and they can smell that on you. And so, again, selfless or selfish, other-centered, self-centered. And so we teach the sales team at Ramsey, you work at a 5-star restaurant with the best wine list on the planet, and your job is to be the best server possible, to where when the people leave that dining experience, we're not in the dining business, but when they leave doing business with Ramsey, that they've had an experience like a dining experience where they were served. And if you ever noticed, if you're in that kind of a setting, and fine food is one of my favorite sports, and so, if you're in that kind of a setting, the server makes all the difference, because they're not just slapping stuff on the table, and you can have the finest food, the finest wine and list in the world, and still have a crummy experience because you weren't served.
Interesting. So how, with that being said, how would a sales pitch have gone without that implemented, and then what did it look like next?
Well, it's manipulative without, because my goal is for me to win.
Okay.
If I'm selling. And so all I care is that you buy. I don't care whether you buy the right thing. I don't care if you need it. I don't care if you finance it and the finance contract ruins your life. I don't care about you. All I'm trying to do is get a unit out the door, and you are a unit of production for me. You're not a human being that I'm trying to make your life better. And so it changes the language, changes the body language, and we all know it. Even people that aren't in marketing or sales, you know it. When you go into an ice cream store, you can feel it. Mm-hmm. Are they there to help you, or are you just another dip? And so it's are they there to, because you meet someone and they light up, you think about it, it's very contrived now, but it's welcome to Moe's, it's like, we're glad you're here. Come into my house. We were at a nice, wonderful restaurant down in Mexico a few weeks ago, and we walk in, the guy's Italian, and it's like you went to his home. He met us at the front door with a glass of champagne. Come into my home. And he had great joy in making sure that you had an amazing experience. I think the food was good, but I got lost in the moment that he created, It's just fabulous. I love that kind of stuff.
Very cool. So, yeah, it sounds like, so be personable, listen to what they want, help them.
What would you do if it's your little brother? What would you do if he's your mama? You make sure they got took care of.
Yeah.
And treat every one of them like that.
It's a great message.
Blow their mind.
What went wrong? What went wrong in your business that you went bankrupt?
I had a 1.2 and 90-day notes, because again, I was buying a property, fixing it. Had a rehab crews running, and so I'd buy a property, fix it up, and flip it. And so at the end of 90 days, you got to pay the whole thing. Or you can renew the note, pay the interest, and renew it for another 90 days if the bank allows that. And they did, because I'd never lost money on a deal. But if I had a house that we didn't get it finished, and it took 6 months instead of 3 months to get it fixed and sold, I paid the interest, renew it, and it's not a problem. And the problem was when they looked down and said, "Oh, we want it all right now." And so basically, I had 120 days, 90-day notes coming up due for $1.2 million, and it's all tied up in real estate. You got to move it all right now. Well, there's a word for real estate sold super fast. It's cheap. I started giving stuff away to meet the note obligations, and so the income stopped, because the income was from the profit, and the profit all went away because I was selling it so cheap to get rid of it. I really wasn't in over my head. I mean, I had $1 million in equity. I was sitting at 75% loan-to-value ratios and things. So that was all working. And I hadn't really lost money on deals. I lost money on a couple of them here or there, but I was making enough to cover that. But I was pretty good at it. But I had built it on this fragile, unsustainable platform of the bank had control of my life. I didn't realize that they had their hands around my neck until they started squeezing. And when that guy walked in and said, you're going to pay all this right now because we're not going to renew any of this. We fired the guy that did these deals with you. And I'm like, why? He shouldn't have done them. I'm like, he didn't do anything wrong. He was doing what you told him to do. And anyway, big argument. And so we had to, that bank called their notes. And then the second largest bank had a $800K with them. And they heard through the grapevine that Dave was in trouble because Dave was in trouble. And so we spent 1 year making $250,000. The next year I made $6,000 because all I did was sell the houses.
Damn.
All I did was just try to do the right thing and pay the bill and be honorable and all those kinds of things. But it didn't matter. They were coming. Every time I would make a move or do anything trying to help them get their money, but they would stick me again. So I was bleeding on every pore, and I was just bound determined I was going to make it, and I almost made it, but I didn't. I ran out of emotional and spiritual fuel, and I couldn't. I was really struggling with that. I was a baby Christian. I was really struggling with the idea that a Christian doesn't pay his bills, and that's awful. It's not, and there's nothing about bankruptcy in the Bible, and so what allows this? And I'm like, they're coming to take the baby bed next week on one of these lawsuits. They're going to take all the furniture out of our house. I got a brand new baby and a toddler. Marriage is hanging on by a thread, and I'm like,
oh, so you had kids when this happened?
I had
2 kids.
Rachel was born in April. We filed in September. So she was a little baby, and Denise was a toddler. And Sharon would have left, but she didn't have a car. It was awful. And I stood in the shower as hot as I could stand. I just stand there and cry. I was so scared I couldn't breathe. I didn't know what to do. And, but I ran, my tank ran dry. My emotional, spiritual, courage, whatever you want to call it, was dry. I didn't know what else to do. And finally they are coming to take the furniture, and I'm like, then I got all redneck, like, they took everything else, they can't have the baby bed, like I couldn't get another baby bed, but I was, so we filed on Thursday afternoon to keep the truck from backing up at the house on Friday morning. I took it that far. 2.5 years of hell.
That was 2.5 years?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
And it was, water got cut off, and I'm not proud of this, but I went and hooked the water back up, and then they cut it off again, and then I went and hooked it back up again, and then they took the water meter out because I kept turning it back on, pirating my own water. But I had 2 little kids in the house. I didn't know what else to do. I was so broke I couldn't breathe, and it's awful. And it's my fault. All of it was my fault. And there's the shame and the condemnation. But then you start to heal, and those scriptures, there is therefore now no condemnation.
So was it a 2.5 year long process of them taking everything, or did it
from the time they called our first notes?
Then...
From the time they called our first notes, we fought it. We said, okay, and I gave them the middle finger. I said, all right, I'm taking you people out of my life, and I started selling everything. And I really was I was so stupid. I was under the illusion I could sell enough of it fast enough to just pay them all off and be done, and then figure out something else to do or whatever. But I couldn't get it all moved, and then they started foreclosing, and I had unsecured notes out too, and they started suing me on those. I got sued like 78 times. Yeah, we were on a first-name basis with the old boy at the sheriff's department that brings those pink lawsuit papers. Yeah, Sharon's like, come in, Harold, I got cookies on. But it was hell.
Wow.
And so, it's pain is a thorough teacher. So it's no wonder Dave Ramsey doesn't borrow money.
Yeah.
When they say the borrower is slave to the lender in Proverbs, I went, yeah, got that one. Got that one. The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender. Got that one. I will never be another banker ever in my life except where I make deposits. And none of you people will ever have that power over my life again. I gave you that power once. I'm not stupid enough to do it again. You're going to put me back in shackles.
Interesting. If you take your health as seriously as I do, you know how important hydration is. That's why I want to tell you about Hoist. Hoist is made in the USA and has 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar compared to other sports drinks, with no artificial dyes or preservatives. Hoist is on military bases globally, serving warfighters in operations and training. I wish I had had Hoist as an option for hydration during my military career, especially the brand new flavor they just released, 5-Star Punch. Through December 31st, 2025, Hoist is donating a minimum of $10,000 to Folds of Honor, a nonprofit organization that provides educational scholarships to family members of fallen service members or first responders. Hoist is now available in all Publix locations. You can use the store locator on their website to find a store near you, or you can purchase directly from drinkhoist.com, where you can use my code SRS to save 15% on their website. Go check out their website. That's drinkhoist.com and use my code SRS to save 15%. As you've heard on my show before, there are bad guys out there who want to try to take us down. It's all they think about. And if you ask me, this could happen at any time. Will it be terrorists? Hackers? We don't know. I just think there's a possibility that something's coming. That's why I'm asking you to get prepared, and I'm making it easy. Go right now to preparewithshawn.com and you'll see a 3-month emergency food kit from My Patriot Supply for $100 off. Their 3-month kit provides 2,000 calories a day, the amount most people need in an emergency, down to the calorie. They've studied survival and know what they're doing. If you're like me and want to help take control of your family's safety, this could be your chance. Go to preparewithshawn.com and get $100 off a 3-month emergency food kit from My Patriot Supply. Preparewithshawn.com. Well, I think I know the answer to this, but I mean, we're having discussions about private equity and all this stuff. I mean, have you ever taken any of that?
Nope.
Nothing.
Nope.
Everything's built for grassroots.
And yeah, we've organically cash flowed. Everything is the business answer to the question. The reason was that, again, I didn't simply go bankrupt and I didn't simply meet God in the process. The whole thing melded together and it took me all the way to powder, to ground zero. And I went, okay. So when I started talking about opening up a business again, after that, when I was healed, I went back to doing some real estate deals just to eat, and I was able to get some food on the table. But a couple years later, I started learning this stuff the Bible says get out of debt, and learning biblical finance, which is common sense. And I thought, okay, I think we can do this. And Sharon and I started to say, okay, we're going to handle our marriage by the book. We're going to handle our kids by the book. We're going to handle our finances by the book. And, the beautiful thing about going broke is you no longer care what everybody thinks. So I'm not taking a poll. I love you, I appreciate you, but you don't really get a vote. Mm-hmm. We get one vote. Jesus gets a vote. He's the only one who gets a vote. And so this is how we, submit yourselves one to another. This is how we're going to be married. That means I got to dry dishes. And that means I got to serve my wife and as a high quality husband, And so how do you lead? How do you hire and fire? How do you, anything I could figure out, I'm going to do it this way. Whatever this book tells me, this is what I'm going to do. And these people in my life that are new friends in my life, to the extent that they're doing one of those things well, according to this book, I'm going to listen to them. And so I had one friend who had an incredible marriage. He wasn't a great business guy, but I could learn how to be a husband from him. And I had another guy who's a great business guy. Wasn't necessarily incredible at his marriage, but I could learn some Christian business principles from him. And so I took that and put it all together. And so all that is to say that the first principle was I don't own the business. God owns it. I'm a manager. Old English phrase in the King James is steward. I'm a steward, which just means I'm a manager of other people's property. And so I don't own Ramsey. God owns it. And so when I started it, I'm like, okay, God, what do you want to name your business? And sat there with a yellow pad and nothing. Couldn't hear anything. Didn't know what to name it. And I kept on, and I thought, what we're going to do is we're going to help people. We're going to give hope. We're going to, we're going to help people that are hurting like we're hurting. We're hurting. And, and so I sat there with a yellow pad. I'm like, okay, God. Next morning, an hour sitting there with a yellow pad, nothing on it. And I wrote down a couple things, and I'm like, that wasn't God. That's last night's pizza. And, figuring out the difference in the Holy Spirit and pepperoni, right? And so, finally I wrote down light. And I honestly looked up and I went, you're just really not good at marketing. Light consulting? I mean, light? That's awful. I'm having this argument with God, like he's worried about me. And I was over at the church doing something, helping this little couple that had their car payment behind, and they had these concordances in the church, these books that you can look up what the Greek or Hebrew meaning is. And I thought, okay, we're gonna open this business, we're gonna help people, and we're not gonna rub their nose in our Christianity, but they're gonna at least know where we got the information. This is where we're coming from, okay? So, and so we're going to talk about it, but not be thumping people with it, right? Because nobody wants to be thumped and Bible thumped. And so, anyway, I opened that book out and I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if the word light only appears one time, because there's always multiple Hebrew words or multiple Greek words for the word light. And so I'll go down through there. Sure enough, there's a Hebrew word, but it shows up like 10 times. Okay, that's not helpful. And so then there's a Greek word for light that shows up multiple times. And here's another Greek word that only shows up one time in Scripture. I thought, well, I wonder what that is. That's interesting. It's Matthew. And I pull open the English Bible, and I'm like, okay, the word is lampo, which obviously we got our word lamp from, light, right? And so I flip open the Bible, and it says, don't hide your light under a bushel. Put it on a lampstand for all to see, which is what we were promising to do, that we were going to, be a light to people. And I went, okay, that's you, God. And so the company that actually owns Ramsey is called Lampo.
No kidding.
Yeah, the Lampo Group, Inc. is the actual corporation, DBA, doing business as Ramsey Solutions. Ran it that way publicly facing for a long, long time, but we started doing some branding shifts. So God named the company. It's his company. He runs it. I don't own it. And if he decides to bankrupt it or it's not going to be generational, it's his. He gets to do with it what he wants to do with it, just like that stupid car that the 17-year-old backed into. And so now based on that, God, what do you want to do with your company? How do you want your employees treated? How do you want your team treated? How do you want people to be compensated? How are you going to treat the girl that gets cancer that works on the front desk? Oh, we paid her, and she wasn't at work for 3 years.
For 3 years.
She's back at work. One of my best friends, I love the girl.
She beat it.
You know what? God would do it. But what would Jesus do? He would taken care of her family. He wouldn't have, oh, you got cancer. We're going to write you up for not being at work. And you get wrote up 3 times, you're going to get fired, right? I mean, I don't think that's how God run a business. So we've done stuff like that. We had a kid get hit in the head with a ball at camp over in North Carolina, and his daddy, I was in Scotland, but my leadership team did this, and they called me to tell me they chartered a plane to send Dad over there because the hospital called and told the dad the kid's got 4 hours to live. You can't get to Asheville, North Carolina from here in 4 hours, but you can if you charter a jet. And if that was me, and my kid is over there, what would I want somebody to do for me? Well, we sent him over on a jet, and the good news is, again, kid made it.
Wow.
The hospital was wrong, thank God, but I, we don't do any of that for any reason. But, the interesting thing is when you love your people well, the rest of them are watching. And it becomes one of the best places to work in America because it's one of the best places to work in America because God runs an incredible business.
I run this very, very similar to that. I got a great relationship with everybody that works there. I care about them. I consider this like a family to me.
Yeah, you can feel it when you walk in.
And, I got a question for you though. And this is just something that I've struggled with is sometimes I feel like my generosity may be somewhat of a weakness. And so what I mean by that is people see the generosity that I have, and there have been a handful of people that come here and they take advantage of that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so how do you, as a business owner, how can you tell the difference? How do you have the foresight into that? How do you deal with it when it does happen?
That, and even worse, you find out later that somebody's betraying or stealing, or they leave and then they say nasty things about you after you did something for them. I gave a guy a car one time, and then he's on a Facebook group, I Hate Dave Ramsey Facebook group, and I would like to tell you I know the formula for that. I don't. It still hurts my feelings, and I still get pissed off. Mm-hmm. It's like I want to go find the guy and choke him, but I'm not going to. And the thing I have struggled with the most on that, and I've got good friends in my life that have walked with me for 30 years, and I got a group of guys that I hang with that don't work at my company, and that a lot of them have been friends for 20, 30 years through this whole spiritual journey. And so I'll just vent with those guys. I'm like, and they go, okay, look, you got 2,000, 1,500 people or so that used to work at Ramsey. You got 1,100 that work there now. 4 of them are twerps. Keep the ratio of how much rent you give in your brain to those 4 correct. Mm-hmm. Because it really should be about 1% of your thought pattern instead of 25% of your thought pattern. Because I don't know about you, but I get mad, I get hurt, and then I just ruminate on it. I just run over and over, and I can do this, and I can do this, and I'm going to shut that Facebook group down. And I've called out some of these people a time or two, but I end up spending too much of my calories on the wrong things then, and it's hard for me, is the answer to your question. That's a real human emotion, but it doesn't invalidate the idea. You're not going to get to the end of your life and go, I regret helping that lady who had cancer.
Yeah.
You're not going to go, I regret giving that, helping that guy with a jet. I regret, whatever the story is where you did something that was generous or whatever. You used some of God's money that he lets you manage to do something for somebody, one of his other children. That's what it amounts to. And God has some crazy kids, man. Some of them ain't right. And so, you just gotta go, And I wish I was better and stronger about just letting that roll off my back, but I'm not. I'm trying to tell you, it's probably not going to quit hurting when somebody does you wrong.
Is it transformed?
But it doesn't mean you don't be generous.
Yeah.
That's the point.
I can't stop that. That's just part of who I am.
Yeah.
At the same aspect, has that transformed you into somebody who's a little more guarded?
Yeah, probably. And I'm probably a little wiser about the generosity. Because I don't want to throw good money after bad. That's not, obviously, I don't want to be a blessing to somebody who's going to do something silly. That's not what I'm trying to do. That was not the intent. And so, you're probably just a little more, I was probably a little more disorganized or chaotic in the generosity. Now I'm probably more precise.
Gotcha.
And I'm going to go, I think about the unintended consequences of this. And I kind of sometimes I think, well, if I do all this and then they, decide they're going to be nasty later on social media about Dave Ramsey or something, how am I going to feel? am I still going to be glad I did it? And I'm like, yeah, because when we give someone a large severance package or something, we're overly generous there, or we take care of somebody and then later, we're really not doing that for what we get from it. So let it go. And I have to just you can tell I have this conversation with myself a lot, but yeah, I'm probably more guarded. I'm not cynical. I don't want to get cynical, but I do want to be more intelligent, more wise about what are the unintended consequences of this, and am I overdoing it out of some kind of sense of weakness or something, or is this exactly what God would do right now? Because it's His money. What do you want to do with your money, God? How would you treat this guy? You know what he's going to do, this gal. You know what they're going to do later. And I'm trying to figure that out. I'm still trying to figure it out. I don't think I'll get it figured out this side of heaven, but it's a fun journey.
So backtracking just a little bit. I'm sorry, what was the original name of the business? Lampo. Is that what was born out of the downturn? Mm-hmm. The consulting business. Yeah.
I first started helping people stop foreclosures because I was a foreclosure and I used to buy foreclosures, and so I know how to stop foreclosures. And house is 3 payments behind. I know how to work the deal with the bank, the deal with the mortgage company, and get them caught back up and keep them from losing their stinking house. And so first thing I did is people would come and pay us a couple of $100, and we would help them get caught up on their credit cards and their car payments and get them on a budget. And there wasn't a class, there wasn't anything. It was just me sitting in a room with a yellow pad and a calculator. And I would call the credit card companies and, yell at them and work because they're complete twerps. And
how did you market that? I mean, coming from somebody that's making $6,000 a year,
word
to a consulting business.
Well, number one, I went back to doing some real estate deals. That's what we were eating on.
Okay.
And I was doing the other stuff at church just as a ministry. The pastor called and goes, "Hey, there's a guy in my office getting foreclosed on. Can you help him?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'll be over in 20 minutes." And I sat down, and that's the first time I ever did it. Well, once you do something good, you show that you have a talent in a church, they'll have you do it all the time. So I was over there almost every night pretty soon with somebody that was blowing up in their finances, and I'm showing them, this is what we learned, this is what we did. We screwed it up, and that, our story of failure kind of took some of the shame off of them so they could start to heal. And then we could say, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to sell this car, and we're going to do this, and I'm going to get you out of this, but it's going to be painful, but you can make it. You can make the turn on this, and you can get on back on top of it. And then a guy from a restaurant chain that went to our church called me and said, "Hey, one of our managers has got an IRS lien. Can you help him? The company's going to pay you a $250 fee to go help him." And it's the first time I ever got paid to do that. And I was doing real estate deals to feed the family back after being broke. And so I went over to that guy, that restaurant, and sat down with that guy, and we refinanced his house and paid off the IRS, which was really not rocket science. I don't know why they didn't know how to do that. But anyway, I helped him get out of that. And then the guy goes, "Hey, I want you to come over at one of our managers' meetings and teach this stuff that you're teaching in that Sunday school class, this get out of debt, get on a budget stuff that you're teaching in that Sunday school class." I went, "Okay." He goes, "We'll give you $250 to do that." Pay me to talk? Oh, yeah, I'm in. And then then he paid me $250 plus $500 in restaurant credit to go to another city to do one of their other managers' meetings. And I'm like, oh, this is so fun. And Sharon and I started doing a little bit more of it, and just kept, I sat down, wrote a little book, and so nobody would buy it. And there was no internet, there was no platform to launch something on. And then I went on a broke radio station that was in bankruptcy and agreed to work for free. And they allowed us to come down and do this horrible talk radio show. It's like a Saturday Night Live skit. 2 hillbillies, Daryl and his other brother, Daryl. WWTN, we're talking Nashville. I mean, it was awful, so bad. But the answers to the questions where people were in pain, the phone stayed lit up every day. And in a matter of months, we had one of the highest rated shows in the city.
Are you serious?
And we were awful. But it had anything to do with the broadcast quality. It had anything to do with the ability to speak or enunciate or properly form a vowel. It had to do with, we love people and we were just helping them. We were doing it for free. We were just doing it for fun. I mean, we weren't getting paid. It was just kind of a ministry, kind of a cool thing. And I'm go do a real estate deal when I get off the air to feed my family. And we told the guy around the station, if we're really bad, you can cut our pay in half, because he wasn't paying us anything. And but it took off, and then Gaylord bought it out of bankruptcy. And it was a big FM station. It's a huge FM station here today in Nashville. And we were on there for 20 years. And that launched the whole thing. Then we started getting paid because we could sell ads because of our ratings, and we're getting paid for the ads. And we could, but it was all about just, again, helping people and just showing them these common sense things. And it turns out common sense, as Ben Franklin said, is not very common.
So it was the company that bought them out of bankruptcy that kind of, you turned it into a business.
Well, that's when we actually started making some money at it, and we didn't even know we had ratings because they didn't show up in the book because we were in bankruptcy. And so we were illegal because we didn't even say the call letters. You're supposed to say the call letters once an hour on radio. It's an FCC guideline, and so we're just talking. And there were no commercials because nobody wanted to buy on this station. We thought 3 people were listening to them were in our family, But the phone was ringing. We knew that. And we said, we're going to do a little seminar at the Ramada Inn, and 600 people showed up.
Holy shit.
And I'm like, oh my God, there's people out there under this radio.
What time span are we talking here?
Oh, we were on the air for maybe a year, and then we just launched, and we said, and then they buy the thing, and the tower was broken. They fixed the tower, and it's a 100,000 watt FM flamethrower. So it covered from Alabama to Kentucky, all of Middle Tennessee. And all of a sudden this thing's like a blowtorch. And they started telling us, you got to say the call letters. As a matter of fact, we're going to change the phone number and make the phone number the call letters. So we went from never saying the call letters to every 30 seconds saying them, which drives ratings because people would know the call letters to write down the ratings books. And so the thing went, it was there. It was what we call phantom cum, meaning it was there, but nobody knew it was there. Mm-hmm. And then we activated it with proper handling of the stupid radio, and we didn't know what we were doing. And they took us to 3 hours, and the guy running the thing, he goes, I'm going to put 2 of your 3 hours against Rush Limbaugh. Rush is on the other station. And I was like, are you trying to shoot us in the face? I mean, you can't beat Rush Limbaugh. It's freaking Elvis. He invented rock and roll. I mean, there's no way, because Rush was the man. I mean, he was king of the hill. And we beat him.
You beat him?
In Nashville. And that was the beginning. It gave us a story to tell with ratings. We didn't beat him anywhere else, hardly, ever. And he became a friend later, but oh my gosh, we were like, woo, the king. And so we couldn't believe it. The ratings came in and went, this is wrong. And it's not wrong. We have a huge radio signal. It's FM. He's on AM. We got this other great lineup around you. Gordon Liddy. You remember that guy? He was on in the mornings before us. And so the thing blew up. And then we were smart enough somehow to say, all right, we're going to stay on your station, but we don't want to be employees. Don't pay us. You don't own the show. We own the show, even though it's worth nothing. But because someday I want to syndicate this thing. Someday I want to put it on other radio stations. And I'll take no money right now, and I'll make my money selling books and doing seminars and doing some consulting work. I can make my money doing that. And yeah, radio lost money for 10 years on our P&L. We couldn't sell enough ads to cover our costs for radio. Well, we started syndicating it, meaning we got other people, we went to Russellville, Kentucky, and that guy put us on. Oak Ridge, Tennessee put us on. Jackson, Tennessee put us on. Then Jackson, Mississippi put us on. And then Spokane, Washington, and then Seattle. And we just one at a time.
Wow.
And there's 640 stations now in the network today.
Wow.
It's the second largest talk radio network in America. Shawn Hannity's number 1. We're number 2.
Wow.
But it was 30 years of scratching and clawing, fighting, and pushing and pulling and putting up with radio business.
What did that develop into? Where did you go from radio?
Well, as we're going in radio, then the guy walks in my office, 10 or 15 years ago, the internet and broadband is starting to have market penetration. And he goes, we need a podcast. And I said, what's the flip's a podcast? And he goes, well, a couple people are doing them, and they're like charging like a subscription thing, and you can make money on it, and you put it behind the paywall. And I'm like, man, I don't think I want to do that. And he goes, oh man, we got to try it. He goes, it's where it's going to go. And I said, I got this huge talk radio thing. Why would I want to do that? And he goes, well, just take the same exact show and let's just put it on the internet. I said, all right, but we're not going to charge for it. Put an hour on there and let's see what it's doing. And we ran it that way. And talk radio people were freaking out about podcasts. They were afraid it was going to put them out of business. Or Rush refused to do one. He didn't want to be disloyal to the radio business. And other people would put out a podcast, but they put it behind a paywall. I mean, you had to pay for it. Now, we just put it on there. If you help enough people, you don't have to worry about money. So we just put it on there. Just put it out there. See what happens. And then XM Radio before that, XM and Sirius were two companies. And we went up on both of those as soon as they came in. And then they combined, and they couldn't figure out what to do with us since we were on both of them. And they ended up giving us a whole channel for a while on the pair. I think we've got probably half a channel right now on there. And so we just jumped on anything and everything because we weren't in the radio business. We were in the helping people business. So we're platform agnostic. And so you could jump to anything. So then the podcast, I'll never forget, I was with Brian Mayfield was one of our, he was our top sales guy, and he had been promoted to run all of our broadcast stuff. And we were in New York, and we got off the plane. We're heading over to do a thing in there, and he goes, hey, that podcast thing's kind of working. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he goes, well, I think we made $1 million on it last year in ad revenue. And I said, for an hour? And he goes, yeah, you can't run many ads on them. They're not like radio. Radio's full of ads. You can put just a couple ads on there an hour. And I said, we made $1 million? He goes, yeah. I said, well, why aren't we making $3 million and put all 3 hours on there? And he goes, we'll do that when we get home. So we put all 3 hours on there. And then YouTube started popping up, and people started putting stuff on YouTube. So we put it on there. And then, Spotify joins the scene, and we jump on Spotify. So anybody comes along, we jump on all of it. And some of it is better than others, and some of it's, for a time, one of them will shine, and then it'll dim. There was a time we thought Sirius XM was going to own the world, and obviously they don't. And so we're just trying to help people, and wherever they are, that's where we're going to go, and that's worked out really good for us.
I mean, rewind it a little bit. So you're doing the radio show, but this developed into books and coaching and in-person coaching and courses. And when did all that start happening?
We started on the radio in June 25th of 1992. I kept doing real estate, again, because we were doing that for free. We did a couple of little seminars here and there, and I wrote a little book, and I started selling a couple of those. I mean, we sold maybe 10,000 of them or something. I couldn't get bookstores to take it. I couldn't get anybody to take it. I'd sell it on the radio, and then they had to mail me a check to a P.O. box. And I had to cash the check and mail them the book. That's how hard it was. Talk about friction. Oh my God, it was ridiculous. And so but everything was analog. So that's the only option you had. And you couldn't get the bookstores to take it because I was a little self-published author, and the little book was ugly, and it worked. It was a good book. But, and so that, had that working. And at the end of the year of 93, I told Sharon, I said, I ran some numbers, and I said, I think we could do, between seminars and launching a class, which I hadn't launched at that point, and the sale of these books and some one-on-one coaching, I think I can make $65,000 next year and quit doing real estate and go all in on financial peace. The book was called Financial Peace. The class was going to be called Financial Peace. I think if we go all in, that year I made $130,000. And I said, I think if we take a pay cut in half, I think this is what God's telling us to do. We're doing God's stuff. We're helping God's people. God owns the company. He's running this. I think it's time to take this and do this. And she said, man, I mean, she was hurting. We were still bleeding out of every pore. we were eating, but I was making 130 grand in 1993 is a lot of money. But we talked about it and fretted over it and prayed over it. And then one morning she woke up and she said, I think God's saying you need to do this. I think you're supposed to do this. And I went, game on. And I stopped doing all real estate and dove all in January 1. And that year I made $61,000. I was pretty close on my estimate. And I don't make that anymore. That was the worst year I ever had.
Damn. When did, the book that I read was Total Money Makeover.
That was the second one, yeah.
That was the second one.
It was actually the third one, technically, but yeah. Financial Peace, the book, was the first one. It took off that year. And what I did was I kept, every time I got a call on the radio that the book didn't answer their question, I wrote it down. I kept a little log of it. And so I updated the little Financial Peace book and put in 5 more chapters that answered our most frequently asked questions. There was no such thing as FAQs in those days, but the book needs to be the answer to every question. And so what I would do is anytime anybody would call, go, okay, here's the answer to your question. Here's exactly what you need to go do. And I'm going to mail you a book because it's going to tell you exactly what I'm telling you right now. And I'll give it to them on the air. But that gave me a mention on the book every day. And I sold 148,000 of them that year. Once I started doing that with a new cover on it, a little green cover, and an agent called me and said, you need a publisher. And I'm like, no, I don't. You don't know the difference between margin and royalty, do you? Margin big, royalty little. And so she's like, I don't need a publisher. I said, I need a publisher when it was in the trunk of my car and nobody would take the book. Now everybody takes the book and I'm cashing the checks. And she goes, well, I got a big company, Viking Penguin wants to come down and visit with you and from New York. And I'm like, I'll always sit down and talk to somebody. I'm not mean about it, but if they think they're going to buy this book, they need to bring a really big truck full of money because, and I'm going to keep control of every bit of it because it's not my book, it's God's. I'm supposed to manage it, not some New York publisher. I'm in charge of this. And so I said, I don't think they got enough money to buy this book. And turns out they did.
They did.
And we did this very unusual contract where I control every aspect of the book. And they did a lot of stuff for me I was not sophisticated enough to do at the time. I didn't understand. And so I was still so primitive and green. But they got a world-class publicist. And, I'm on the Today Show. I'm in People Magazine. I'm, all these other major national hits. And to launch the book and relaunch the book in hardback now. And we sold 293,000 of them that month, and it hit the New York Times, and all of a sudden the whole world changes. And that book is now done 3.2 million total. Since including the ones I used to carry in the trunk of my car in 1992. And so it's a long time. And it's still in hardback, and it still looks exactly the same because I control all that. So, and I still get royalty checks from those fine people. They're sweet as they can be. And, and then we went on and that was a 2-book deal. The other book didn't do that well. And then Total Money Makeover came from Thomas Nelson here in Nashville. Mike Hyatt was the CEO of that. And he comes over and he goes, you need to do another money book. It's been 7 years. And I'm like, I don't really have anything else to say. Everything I said's in that book. It's what I say every day on the radio. Why do I do enough? Tell somebody like something new? And he goes, well, that book's what to do. This is how to do it. You need to do a book on the baby steps and show people tactically, how to do this. And that book's done 14 million now. It's crazy.
Wow.
That's the biggest thing we've ever done. It's nuts.
Well, it's a damn good book. I hope everybody listening to this should read it.
I didn't want to do it because I thought it was insincere because I had I'd already said a lot of the same stuff, but I didn't talk about how to do it. And so Total Money Makeover legitimately was how to do it, and obviously that was needed.
What other aspects of the business did you start developing? You started with the coaching, went to radio, went to podcast, books.
Yeah, we just kept looking and going, okay, where is there a need? Where's somebody that we can get help with this material. And so a coach up here at the Catholic school, Father Ryan, here in Nashville, Coach Carson, dropped by the office one day and he goes, "Hey, I just want y'all to know, I feel like I ought to tell y'all, I've been buying these financial peace books and I'm taking my high school seniors through it. I'm showing them how in my math class how to do this stuff." And he goes, I didn't want y'all to think I'm stealing something. I just want you to know we're doing it. And I went, that's really cool, because ever since I've had a single book, first thing people pick up a book off the table, they look at me and go, "Why isn't this taught in high school? Why didn't I know this stuff before I was a broke 30-year-old? Why didn't somebody teach me this stuff?" And I've heard that my whole career. And I went, "Okay, hey, Coach, why don't we work together and we'll kind of use you as the guinea pig. Let's start developing an actual curriculum for high school students out of it, instead of you having to use an adult book for kids, and the kids don't have to know what some of that crap is." And so we filmed a little thing and put it on VHS and put it in his class, and then we put it a couple other places, and then we got thrown out of 3 or 4 places because I said Jesus in the video, and they freaked out. So then I got to learn a whole new thing about law, which I didn't know, the Supreme Court rulings on what can be taught in public school and what can't be taught, and ended up in this big legal mess. And but we fixed all that, and we've got it to where we can. Actually, side note, you can actually use Scripture and talk about God in public school, as long as it's instructive, not you're not trying to convert them. And so you can say, Jesus said, "Don't build a tower without first counting the cost." And you can say, Ben Franklin said, "Save money." And you can say, Mark Twain said this about, whatever, debt. And you can, it's instructive, but you can't say Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. So you can't proselytize. And there's very clear stuff on that. Now, a lot of public school administrators are cowards, and they think anything that says Jesus should be thrown in the street. And so they haven't done it. But now we've gotten 6 million students through it, and 48% of America's high schools have now taught that curriculum. And that was 25 years ago we started that. It's a massive business.
Wow.
And now we've opened up a full econ curriculum to go with it, because apparently we need to teach what capitalism is. I didn't know that was a problem, but we need to. So we're now doing that too. So, and there's a lot of Texas, Florida are the latest 2 that have just passed mandatory personal finance class in high school. And guess what? We can help them with that. So, yeah, and we've got then we had, the financial peace class, we ended up going through 50,000 churches, and about 10 million people went through it. And we said, okay, let's take that class, which is a very religious class. It's all about what God says about money, and it was taught in church. And very in your face, not subtle at all. And corporate America didn't want that much in your face, which is understandable. But they wanted to teach their team that, because if your team's worried about their money, they're not thinking about work while they're at work. Their productivity goes down. So we ended up, reconfiguring all that in a much more palatable way called Smart Dollar. And now U-Haul and Costco and many, many other companies teach that, buy it from us as a curriculum, an HR benefit to the team. They can go through the class. And so we just keep doing stuff like that. Something pops up, and we launched a budgeting app, almost 10 years ago now, and iterated every day almost. It updated, and it's freaking incredible. Every dollar, and I think we've got 56 million downloads now on that or something.
Holy cow.
It's just, but again, none of it's easy. You just stumble backward into it, look confused, and stumble forward. And, but we just keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing. But yeah, you just monetize the connectivity and the service that you're providing. And sometimes you do stuff just because you need to help people and you don't make any money on it. And that's okay too.
Did you ever, I know that, back at the beginning, you said that the money kind of came to you. People just came to you and offered you $250 to go speak to them and their employees. But when did it have to start kind of transitioning from hey, people coming to you to somewhat of a sell? And did you find that
Well, I mean, like if
difficult?
we have a sales team that sells the curriculum to high schools.
Yeah.
We have a sales team that sells the smart dollar to corporate America.
Okay.
And so we're going after, they're not lining up around the block. We got to go get them.
Yeah.
We got to tell them we're there. A lot of times they don't even know we're there. And so you have to go through the whole process of being approved as a curriculum before the school board at the state level. And then the local county can decide whether they want to buy it or not. And so you got to go, and then some character will stand up and go, you can't have Dave Ramsey here because he likes Jesus and we don't have Jesus anywhere and all this stuff. And I'm like, hey, dude, you need to actually read the curriculum. You kind of sound foolish because it's really not a preaching curriculum, son. It's just to teach little kids not how to get into debt. And you probably wished your kid had learned it. So you probably ought to, before you just start being a left-wing barker. But anyway, we just work our way through that stuff. And yeah, we have to be proactive in sales. And when we were doing the church thing, we had 38 people calling churches all day long. And, putting the pastor through the thing for free. And so he would see what it is. Because pastors aren't comfortable usually talking about money. Because they don't want to be like one of those churches that talks about money all the time. And so they end up going too far the other way and never talking about what the Bible says about money, which is also a disservice to their congregants. Because if you're pastoring, you ought to teach people what God says about marriage, what God says about money, what God says about leadership, what God says about, that's your job as a pastor. And so,
What does God say about money?
there's 2,500 scriptures dealing with money and possessions. Some of it's very nuanced and almost funny. The 4 or 5 main things that you think about is debt, borrower, slave to the lender. Debt is not a sin in the Bible, not even close. But 100% of the scriptural references to debt are negative. And so it's your heavenly Father who loves you, who's crazy about you, saying, son, this is dumb. That's what it amounts to. And there's a lot of scripture about planning and budgeting. The mind of man plans his ways, but the Lord directs his steps. And I already quoted the one from Jesus, don't build a tower. You're building a house. Don't do that without a blueprint. And don't handle your money without a detailed thing of where the freaking money's going. And so have a plan, get out of debt. The house of the wise are stores of choice food and oil. Wise people save money, saving, investing. Ecclesiastes says, spread your portions to 7, yes to 8, for disaster may come upon the land. Diversification's in the Bible. Don't put it all in one place. Foolish man devours all he has. If you spend everything you make, you're a fool. God said that, not me. And so, the scriptures like that, they sound like grandpa. They sound like grandma. It's common sense. Mm-hmm. There's nothing in here that's like, woo, you're right. It's just like, no kidding, dummy. But I didn't know any of it. And I thought you just borrow all you can. That's what I thought. And I did. And it cost me. And people don't know. And one of the funny ones is almost nuanced is, Proverbs 17:18 says, one lacking in sense cosigns for another. Cosigning alone, you're lacking in sense. The contemporary English version, the CEV, says, if you cosign for someone else, you're an idiot. That's what that version says. And so, and guess what? I've co-signed some loans, and 100% of the time they turned out bad back in the day, And when I was going broke, one old boy stepped in, tried to help me, and co-signed for me, and it cost him. I had to go back and pay him later, and his wife still don't talk to me. It costs you 100%. You co-sign a loan for your little boy, and then your little boy is an idiot and runs a car in a ditch with no insurance, and now you're stuck with a $30,000 bill because you were trying to do a nice thing for someone, and you did it a dumb way. That's co-signing. That's in the Bible. Who knew?
Interesting. How are you at the work-life balance? You have a business empire. Your husband, your father, are you a grandfather too?
Oh, 8 grandkids.
8 grandkids. And so how do you balance it all? Are you able to switch it off?
Oh yeah.
You are?
Yeah.
How do you switch it off?
Well, full disclosure, let's go back to launching the thing. When we opened that first little office at $61,000, right? My wife grew up in a hardworking farm family in East Tennessee. Her daddy owned a market And when you own a market, a convenience store, you work. You come home at 11 o'clock at night. Mm-hmm. You work. And on Thanksgiving, we waited Thanksgiving dinner on her daddy until he could get the store closed at noon because he opened for breakfast. They sold biscuits, and he opened for breakfast, and he closed at noon on Thanksgiving, came home. But Thanksgiving and Christmas, the only time he closed. He was there all the time. So that's the family she grew up in. So she's not going to whine. She's quite the opposite. She's kicking my butt out. Go get some work done. What are you doing sitting here? And so we're hungry. You need to go do something. And but the first 2 years were maybe 2.5 years from the time we opened that second office under Lampo. And we start teaching financial peace with an overhead projector and a bad suit. And I'm teaching it at night, every night. I'm doing the radio show every day in the afternoon, and I'm in the office in the morning doing counseling. And so I get up, go to the office at 7:30. I get home at 11 o'clock at night for 2 years. So I didn't have work-life balance then. But it was agreed upon that that's what it took to get the ball moving.
Yeah.
And it was not going to be forever. We've got to figure this out. We got to staff it. We got to change the business model. We got to do something to get it where we can. But it takes oomph to get the thing over the hill. Once you get it rolling, then you can start to back off a little bit. So from then on, I start learning. And I'm a young guy at that point trying to heal emotionally and financially and spiritually from this horrible event we've been through. So I'm still, this guy, right? Still freaking out. And, but we quickly figured out that work-life balance is it is not a true thing.
Yeah.
What you need to do is wherever you are, you need to be 100% there. And so what happens is people that say they want work-life balance, they go home at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, which is fine, but then they turn on Netflix or they open up their stupid computer and they're looking at their Instagram account. They're not interacting with their family. And so they're doing work emails once they get home. And they call that work-life. That's not work-life balance. Work-life balance is when you get home, game on. I'm looking at this little 3-year-old's eyes.
Yeah.
I'm in the floor playing and rolling around. My wife and I are actually having a conversation without a phone laying there, and so that's, be where you is a big deal.
Yeah.
And so, that's the first thing we did. The second thing we did was as we start going along, then we said, okay, I'm going to work my butt off, and I might go on like a Total Money Makeover book tour is 42 days. I was gone. I was like some kind of musician or something living out of a bus. And, but we knew that going in. We said, okay, at the end of 42 days, we're taking everybody to Disney. But there's going to be a period of time here, Dad. You little people's part is don't drive your mom crazy, because there's going to be a time that we're all going to be right together, and there's on and then on. And when we're at Disney, we weren't worrying about the book.
Gotcha.
And so we're there. So then the next thing we did was we said, okay, no birthdays and no proms and no ice hockey championships. They're on the calendar first. No events during those days. So we did a lot of live events in those days. We traveled a lot doing events. But if I'm going to be doing a live event, I may do 6 or 7 in a spring or something like that. I'm getting ready to do a 6-city tour right now. But there are none of them over my daughter's prom date, because I need to be standing there when that young guy comes in. So he understands I'll be cleaning my gun when he gets home. Right? And so, 9 o'clock, I'm not kidding you. And, so he needs to know. And my daughter, we're going to be there, and I'm going to be there for that picture, and I'm going to be there for that thing. And so I didn't miss those things, but I didn't make every hockey game.
Yeah.
And I didn't make, my daughters were cheerleaders. I didn't make everything, but we were there a lot. And we put it on the calendar, and we said, okay, and when we're there, we're not sitting and doing emails on our phone in the stands while they're doing it. We're watching the freaking game. And, I coached Daniel in hockey for a while, and my son. And so, we put it on the calendar. And then lastly, we went to a marriage conference, and I picked a Christian marriage guy teaching. It was really good. And I picked this up from him. He said, if you're going to turn it off when you get home, it's an intentional act to turn it off. It doesn't happen automatically. He said two things. One is and I started doing this, I would turn into the street, where our house is, the cul-de-sac where our house was, and I would stop at the bottom, and I would play 2 praise and worship songs. Switch. And he said the other thing is, you don't use the same tools on your family, the same weapons on your family you've been using to fight the wars all day long. He said when that pioneer comes in from hunting all day, he takes a musket, he puts it over the mantle, and he turns around, and there are no bears in the room to kill. These are children. There are no things to be done here. And this is my wife. And so I have to put my sword above the mantle. I have to put my musket above the mantle. I got to quit using the same mental gymnastics and processes, because it's a different skill set.
Yeah.
To run a business or win in business, or to, the rough and tumble of what you and I do every day, that you don't use that on a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
And so I had those 3 things helped me a lot.
Yeah. That wasn't a general question. I'm asking for myself, because I struggle with that. And I think I'm through the 16, 18-hour days of lifting this thing up. And I mentioned I'd hired a COO, and we got a producer now, and the team that we have is amazing. But
well, I started getting enough people on the team that were better at stuff than I was, that I went, I don't really need to be doing that. I suck at it. He's good at it. Let him do it. And, I could delegate, in other words, because I had high quality humans working on the team. That helped a lot. And then occasionally Sharon would go, you're not the Messiah. That's Jesus's job. You can not be somewhere and people will survive.
I think that, for me, it's not just the worry of not being here. And I know these guys can run this without me. I fucking love what I do.
Oh, me too.
Like, I love this, and and I also love my family, but my mind is just going 1,000 miles an hour all the time, and it's really hard for me to shut it off. I mean, new ideas are popping in my head, new business verticals are popping in my head, new guests are popping in my head, and just engineering the business to grow and to grow and to grow. And I find it,
and obviously it's working.
Really, it is working. And I just find it really hard to make that mental switch, where you go home and you are 100% present with your wife and kids. Yeah. And so,
well,
it's a personal
nothing's
question.
perfect. I've gotten emails when I'm on vacation. I mean, that happens. There's none of this is pure. But it's just a series of intentional acts. And, my dad used to say 90% of solving a problem is realizing there is one. And so just the idea to go, okay, if I can just turn off a whole lot of it, but not all of it at night. And, the inverse is true, too, by the way. You can't be constantly worrying about every little diaper needs to be changed while you're down here trying to get your work done. Yeah. And, I had one old boy working for me. His wife called him 52 times in one morning.
Oof.
And I'm like, the receptionist came in and she goes, this is nuts. And all I'm doing is answer the phone for this guy's. And I said, what is going on? When I sat down at his desk, I said, man, she called you 50 times. And he goes, yeah. I said, you probably ought to just go home. It'd be easier. Take the day off, go figure it out. And he goes, I don't want to. I bet. But that's the other side of it, right? You got to be able to leave your home at home.
Yeah.
And truthfully, you've got the kind of wife that I do, to where, I'm not getting, even when the kids were little, I've never gotten stuff dumped in my lap from family problems in the middle of the day. She's not a high maintenance woman. Quite the opposite. My wife did not say, wait till your father gets home. She took care of it, I can just tell you. So, and that's one of the reasons we were able to grow and do things, because I was able to concentrate, and I didn't have a wife that called me 52 times in the morning. It wasn't needy, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's my wife's very much on board with this. But the one thing she says to me is, Shawn, you need to be present when you're here.
Yeah.
You cannot be at work.
And she's right.
And making that mental switch it's been tough. I'm still working on it, but
yeah, it's not hard. It's just worth it.
So you grew from doing this out of a church. How many employees does Ramsey Solutions have now?
Just under 1,100.
Wow. 1,100 employees. And your facilities, it's incredible.
Yeah, and we've got a great campus. I'm real proud of it. God has blessed us beyond our wildest imaginations. Crazy, out of control.
Let's talk about culture.
Mm-hmm.
So I know culture is extremely important to you in your business, as is to me. I'm building out our culture. I've been building it since the beginning, and you know, I just want everybody to be proud of where they work, enjoy coming to work, not going home and going, oh shit, you know. Everybody complains about their work, almost everybody, and so I'm really curious and to hear how you built the culture of Ramsey. I never hear anybody. When we do a hire, we get a lot of people from different networks around the area that apply that can't stand where they work. We've never had one person apply from Ramsey.
No, wow.
Because they love what they're doing there, right. And they believe in what you're doing. And so I'm just curious to hear how you built the culture and how you keep your employees so proud of what they're doing. I've only seen a couple of places like this. And
well, number one, it's not perfect. We need to say that out loud. But again, much like the other discussion we were just having, it's a matter of being very, very intentional about it. The first thing I think that I remember is we got to about, I think we were 60-something people, and I hired an HR director, which I didn't want. That felt like corporate crap, you know. I didn't want to do that, right? It sounded like, and one of the first things I told him is, you're not hiring anybody. The leaders are going to hire their own people. That's not your job. But your job is just to help us understand some of this HR stuff. And because HR in corporate America has way too much power, as far as I'm concerned. I don't want them to have the power. I want them to just help us get the work done. And so the guy's name was Rick Perry. He was brilliant. And he retired from Ramsey not long ago. He worked there for decades. And we would have something blow up, and some kind of a problem with the team or with whatever. And the way I've always done everything is the leadership team makes the decisions in a collaborative style. We just all get in a room and we argue about it and we figure it out. I don't walk in and go, da da da, I have the answer, because I don't a lot of times. Or I may, but I don't go, I'm the guy that owns it, you have to do what I say. It's not because I'm afraid to tell somebody what to do. If they need to do it, I'll tell them, but it's very much a thing. And I told you I did an exercise with a ministry thing with SEAL Team 6 one time, and you and I talked about that offline one time. And I just loved watching those guys get together at the end and debrief. And I asked if I could stand, you know, just got in a circle. There was one squad or whatever, and I asked if I could stand there with them. And the guy said sure. And I don't say anything, just listen. I wasn't planning on it. I don't have anything to say, but I didn't know who was the senior officer by body language or by input or by criticism. They all took down problems. They were very blunt, very clear, very kind, but you couldn't tell who was the leader. It was very democratic, so to speak, when I watched them debrief that mission or that exercise we had done. And what went right, what went wrong, all that kind of stuff, right? And to learn from doing the exercises, I guess, is the point. So that's kind of what we do, but I didn't know that was a common thing. I just did it. And so everybody's more than welcome to argue with me. As a matter of fact, it's preferable if you argue with me, because if you don't have anything to add, why are you here? And so let's get in a room. Let's do the same thing. Let's debrief this thing. So we would debrief it, and Rick would sit in there because he's the HR director, and we would go, okay, we got it. Here, we drive it, take it to ground. Here's what the answer is. Here's what we're going to go do. And then Rick would say, whoa, let me make sure, because I'm going to write it down, what the value was. What was the value system, the core value that drove this decision? Why did you all come to this decision? Because all of you seemed to, you went around and around and around, and boom, you landed on it. Why did you do that? And he'd write it down. And he goes, okay, that's a core value. I don't even know what a core value is, but okay, sure. And we get up and go on our way. He started collecting those, and he wrote down like 16 or 18 things. He said, this is how Ramsey makes decisions. This is who we are. It's not who we wish we were. It's who we are. It's not aspirational. This is it. This is the way we decide to do stuff. And the stuff he wrote down, I mean, it was accurate, but it was horribly worded. And so we got in a room after a few years of looking at that stuff and went, yeah, that is how we make decisions. And this is a training tool. We can show everyone in the organization, this is how we make decisions. These are our core values. And if you get these core values, then you will know what to do if we're not there. You will know that if I'm in Scotland, you can send a jet for the guy, this kid, you know. You will know that's what Ramsey would do. You can finish my sentences because these are the core values that cause my sentences to come out of my mouth. And this is what Dave would do. What would Dave do? What would we do? What would Ramsey do? What would God want us to do in this situation? Write it down. And so some of them were a little bit redundant. So we ended up with 15 and later 14. And we put a little better titles to them and a little better stuff. And then we used those to say, this is who we are, and we reinforce those. I taught one of them for 30 minutes in staff meeting to all 1,100 people yesterday. I do that. We do it over and over, and this is who we is. This is who we is. You want to be a we? This is it. If you're not this, you're not one of us. This is who we is. This is who we is. This is who we is. And the one I taught yesterday was marketplace service. If you help enough people, you don't have to worry about money. And so your job is to blow the customer's freaking mind. If you help enough people, go make sure they get help. They called you, they came in contact with us. God sent them to us because they were hurting or they had an opportunity, and we need to give them hope in that area with a biblical, common sense answer. Your job, no matter what you do here, is to blow their mind. If you're shipping a book, if you're writing a line of code, if you're in HR and you're recruiting, your job is not like crazy in the building. Your job is put people in the seat that are going to be crusaders, because our job is to help people, and we won't have to worry about money, and we haven't had to worry about money. So that's one. Another one is we don't, gossip. No gossip. You hand your negatives up, and you're going to have negatives. There's 1,100 opportunities in the building for you to be pissed off. So you're going to have problems. Human beings are in this building. You're not going to like one of them. Something's going to happen. It's going to hurt your little freaking feelings, or you're going to get frustrated with leadership, or you're going to have this. Welcome to life. Hand your negatives up. You can have your negatives. Don't be belligerent, but you can come into any leader's office and sit down and go, I don't understand. I'm really frustrated. Help me. You can do that anytime. You cannot do that at the water cooler with a coworker and go, leadership's a bunch of idiots, because that's disloyal, and I will fire your butt. I have no tolerance for that crap. If you're going to do that, you need to do it in a Facebook group after you quit. Leave me alone. I'm not going to give you money to run me down. Henry Cloud says, I don't understand why people pee in their own cereal and then gripe because it tastes bad.
Don't shit in your own backyard.
Exactly. And people do it all day long at jobs. All they do is sit around and talk about how stupid the place they work is, and these are the people that give them money to feed their family. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. If the people you work for are stupid and you stay, what's that make you? Stupid. So hit the road. Don't let the door hit you in the butt. And we have this talk all the time. And about once a year, we got to fire somebody. But most of the time, there's no gossip, because we don't do that. And if someone starts to say something, they go, wait a minute, we don't do that. And you don't have to have even a leader. It could be somebody that joined the company 3 weeks ago, and they go, hey, wait a minute, they told me in onboarding, we don't do that. If you got a problem, you probably ought to take it to the leader, because I can't help you with that. If you're sharing negatives with somebody who can't help you fix it, that by definition is a bunch of crap. And we don't do that. That's one of the 14. And it's weird. It's very weird, very strange, but it's very clean. The air is clean in the place. There's no bad smells.
Everybody holds each other accountable.
Yeah, we just because everybody wants to work in a place where you don't have to watch your back. Somebody not knifing you in the freak from behind.
Yeah.
In most places, you're trying to get your work done while looking over your shoulder. And that's just counterproductive, And so stuff like that, we just kept doing that, and it's just reinforce. And I was having lunch with my son, who's our president, yesterday, and he was telling me about a thing that's going on. I said, yeah, you know what that guy says that we all talk about? I said, yeah. He goes, yeah, I know what you're going to say. And I said, good. What am I going to say? He goes, we get what we tolerate. And I said, okay, then don't freak. You're going to let that go on. You don't sit here and tell me how frustrated you are about it. Fix it. You get what you tolerate. And so I can be kind, be clear, and be gentle. But sometimes your job is that you don't get to work here anymore because you're not a we. And you're more concerned about your little toxic problem or whatever it is you've got than actually being a part of this team and getting work done and helping the people that aren't here. This organization's been blessed, and we are blessed to be a blessing like Abraham. That means that we exist for the people that are not inside the walls of that campus at Ramsey. We exist for the people outside those walls. And if you don't be centered on them, you're not one of us. And we just talk about that with that kind of in the voice, all the time. And we have for 30 freaking years. And so people choose, they run out of steam, they start to think we're incompetent. And that happens all the time, and they leave, they quit. They go do something else. That's okay, that's fine. Just, if your spirit leaves, for God's sakes, take your body with it, And that's our stuff we talk about until everybody's sick of hearing it. But then it sticks.
It's interesting too that you've always done it, but you picked that up when you did the exercise with SEAL Team 6. I wasn't at 6, but that is the culture of the SEAL teams.
Yeah.
Is everybody's vested, everybody has ideas, everybody
dies
has critiques.
if you don't.
Yep. And so
nobody dies at Ramsey. That's serious.
And so that's something that I brought here. Is I love to hear ideas. I love to hear to flush it all out. We call it a hot wash.
Yeah.
And I love to hear critiques. I don't want yes men that are just like yes, 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 yes. We flush everything out, all the positives, all the negatives, and so it's just thank you for sharing that. It's reassuring to hear that.
But then sometimes folks that you thought were going to be with you a long time, their brain goes and leaves, and then you got to sit down and have a hard conversation and go, can't be here. Yeah. And I've had some of my best friends that work there because they've been with me for 20 years. These are band of brothers, band of sisters. We fight together. We take on freaking COVID idiots, and we take on all this other crap that we all have to deal with out here in the marketplace, and all the haters, and you take on all the the negative press, or because somebody's always got something to say, and you take on all that stuff together, and you fight, and then you win, and then you fight, and then you go to the Super Bowl, and you lose in the last play, but you almost got there, and then and you do that for a long, long time, and then after 20 years, they decide that they're not going to be there, or that they don't want to participate in this culture anymore, and it's really painful, but they can't stay, because I'm not quitting, so we're going to keep doing it this way. And so somebody's got to leave, and it's not going to be me. So it's not how this works. So, and it's, but man, we just have to have those difficult conversations, we call them. And they're a regular part of the rhythm too. You can't, John Maxwell says you can't sanction incompetence, because if you sanction someone not doing their job, now, if they got cancer, that's different, right? But you don't sanction someone that's just a half butt, because all the other studs are looking at the half butt going, wait a minute.
Yeah.
That's okay? No, that ain't okay. Now, you can give somebody some grace if they're going through a personal thing, or, lots of grace. But I'm talking about just in general, we're playing to win the Super Bowl. You better take your block and hit it.
Yeah. Well, Dave, let's take a quick break.
All right.
And when we come back, we'll dive into your new book.
Okay.
If you're like me, health and wellness is extremely important to you. But how do you know who to trust when it comes to the supplement industry? We have all these companies. They pop up every other day. They're all selling snake oil. How do you know who to trust? Well, here's the most important question. Who wants to take the biggest, most massive shit of your entire life? Bubs is a company I've used and trusted for a long time. They make great products, have rigorous quality standards, and they are a longtime supporter of this show. And they have the recipe for the biggest shit of your entire life. I love their collagen peptides. This isn't just any collagen. It is a benchmark of trust and performance. It's crafted with integrity and backed by NSF for sports certification, giving you their assurance of its purity and potency. Bubs Collagen Peptides help support your joints, help enhance recovery, and help revitalize your hair and skin. And yes, it will help you stay regular. Bubs was founded in honor of Navy SEAL Glenn Bub Doherty, and every product supports veterans with 10% of all profits going to help military men and women transition back into civilian life. And now for the recipe for the biggest and best shit of your entire life. Bubs Collagen Peptides mixed with Bubs apple cider vinegar gummies, and you have a recipe for success every day. Bubs Collagen Peptides, Bubs apple cider vinegar gummies. Ready to upgrade your life? Visit bubsnaturals.com today and use promo code Shawn for 20% off your order. bubsnaturals.com/Shawn. I'll admit it, before Shopify, running my business was tough. Figuring out how to market and sell products, fulfill orders, keep track of shipping and transaction records, not to mention creating a website. Shopify made all of that super easy. Nobody does selling better than Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. And the not so secret, Shop Pay can boost conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going through. If you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Businesses that sell more sell on Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout we use with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month for a 3-month trial period at shopify.com/SRS, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/SRS to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/SRS. All right, Dave, we're back from the break. And man, I got so excited to talk to you that I forgot to give you your gift here.
Oh,
Everybody gets a gift.
all right, gummies.
The same
Love your
gift.
gummies, man.
Vigilance League gummy bears, legal in all 50
I don't think I got anything
states.
left from the last time we met, so this is perfect. I'll refill my stash.
We'll send you a whole bunch. But
Love it. Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. But I did have, before we do dive into your book, I just had a couple of questions, just random questions. One is about Generation Z. And, I'm sure you hear it a lot more than I do, but a lot of grumblings on it's tough to buy a house now, interest rates are high. What advice do you have for Gen Zers? A lot of them seem, how do I say this? A lot of them seem to think that it's impossible to be able to afford a home and to get ahead financially in today's economy.
I'm actually in love with Gen Z. It's one of my favorite generations. We've got about 450 of them on our team.
Wow.
And they are they do share one characteristic with the millennials. They're very bifurcated, meaning they're either awesome or they suck. There's no middle ground. They're not posers. Mm-hmm. Gen Z's really not posers. They're really not. They don't do facade. They've grown up with a magic wand in their hand that they can push a button and stuff happens. They've grown up being able to answer any question instantly. They've grown up with influencers that aren't real, that haven't earned the right to influence. And so they're very careful. They're wise beyond their years in that sense. And so what we end up with is the ones we end up talking to in the money space. I'm talking to ridiculous 22-year-olds that are calling in that have, this guy called me the other day, he's got $150,000 saved. And he's 22 years old. I'm like, how the freak did you do that, man? I couldn't do that when I was 22. I borrowed it, but I couldn't do it. They're very impressive, very serious-minded. And then there's another group that's entitled and victim-based, and they're like, capitalism has failed me, no bull crap. But, there's kind of been that in every generation. There's always a group of entitled whiners, and there's victims, and there's always the ones that are victors. And there's always a percentage of each. So, but anyway, the overall answer is that I give to folks that are struggling with the ability to afford life or to afford to buy a home, those kinds of things, is you're making the mistake of thinking that because something today is your situation, that it's going to be your situation tomorrow. Life is not a still shot. It's not a single frame. It's a film strip. And 100% chance the next frame is going to be different than the last frame and the next frame. And you're going to go through this thing. Because if when I went bankrupt and I was in my 20s, if I had said, okay, that's the definition of Dave, now that is my identity, I'm an idiot. I would have been still sitting there, right? But instead I go, okay, no, wait, that's just where I am today. That doesn't necessarily define tomorrow. And so maybe today you can't afford a house with current interest rates and your salary, your income. That does not mean that's the case tomorrow. Interest rates will change, house prices will go up, and hopefully your income will go up. And maybe you need to adjust where you live. Because when I started the radio show 33 years ago, there was a large number of people that could not afford to live in downtown Manhattan in New York City. 33 years later, there's a large number of people that can't afford to live in downtown Manhattan, some of the most expensive real estate in the world. You can't live in Silicon Valley and make minimum wage today. You couldn't 20 years ago. You can't live in San Diego and buy a home, which would be double the national median average on homes, if you live there making entry level and you throw boxes at Costco. You can't do it mathematically. By the way, you've never been able to do it. So you're going to choose to live somewhere else or do something different. And when you make those choices, the frames change and you're going to be okay. But you have to say, instead of I'm going to sit here and whine and I'm going to be a victim of the circumstances, instead I'm going to control the controllables, which is what I make, where I live, and what am I doing to better myself so that I make more and choose to live in a place that I can buy a house. I had a couple on my radio show do a debt-free scream yesterday. They paid off their home at 37 years old. He is a middle school math teacher and she is a stay-at-home mom. How in the world did they do that? They live in a town that is in the middle of nowhere in Kansas. It's outside of Wichita, which means there's nothing there but groundhogs, right? Prairie dogs.
Sounds
right?
like where I grew up.
I said, what's your home worth? $125,000. And they paid off their home. But he's a middle school math teacher, makes $65,000 a year. His wife stays at home with the kids. And they've chosen to live in that location for whatever reason. They may have started there. I don't know how long they were there. I didn't get the full history and bio on the family, but they did a debt-free scream. They're 37 years old and have a paid-off house. But they're not sitting in the middle of San Diego going, oh, I make $65,000 as a middle school math teacher, and middle school math teachers are underpaid, so I can't buy a house. No, you doofus, you're sitting in the wrong place with the wrong set of numbers. You've got to change something here. And when you change, then you'll go on to the next frame, and you'll be just fine. So make more, move, both. Wait on interest rates to come down, save some money, pile up some money, get ready for the market to slow down, pick up, whatever the market's going to do. 100% chance that it's going to be different 5 years from today.
What do you think about crypto? I mean, I've heard you speak on crypto. You hate it. I don't know if that's changed at all. I mean, I believe the Trump administration just put some into the reserve, Bitcoin, Cardano, Ethereum, and is it XRP?
Yep.
And I'm just curious. That the space just seems to be getting bigger and bigger and evolving, and more people are taking it seriously. I was just curious.
I think it's going to continue to get bigger, and I think it's going to continue to get better, and it's going to continue to stabilize. I mean, it was a volatile Wild Wild West crap show for a long time. and it kind of still is, really, but it's not nearly as bad as it was when we first started talking about the subject. So I think it's getting better. It's getting more sophisticated. It's probably therefore getting safer. But even when it stabilizes and becomes more normalized, so to speak, and it's got a little track record to it, and you can look back and go, okay, the last 15 years, here's what it's done, not the last 15 days. Then you still got to say, okay, what do I want to invest in? And what happens with people with gold or crypto or a lot of other things is they confuse the concepts of speculating versus investing. And that's why I've come out so hard on crypto, because I have people calling and saying, I'm not doing investing, I'm investing in crypto, which is an oxymoron. You can't. The only thing you could do in crypto is to speculate. The only thing you can do in gold is to speculate. Speculating is a short-term play. Because if you look at a long-term play on something that doesn't have a track record, crypto, you can't look at a long-term play. You're really, gambling is here. Speculating is I'm putting some money in, playing with this. I think I might make some money. But I'm really not thinking 40 years. I'm not thinking 25 years. I'm not thinking I want to retire from this. But this is speculating. Even if you're a home builder and you build a home that doesn't have a buyer, they call it a spec home. They're speculating. It's a short-term play. They didn't build a rental property they're going to keep for 25 years. They built a piece of inventory that they want to turn right now into money. So speculating is short-term. Investing is over here is long-term. They're not the same thing. If you want to speculate, which would not be you're not betting the farm. You're not betting your quality of life. You're not betting your wealth-building portfolio on it. I've got friends that are worth $100 million, and they've got, they put $1 million in crypto. But if they burned $1 million in the middle of their kitchen floor, they won't miss it, ratio-wise. That's speculating, and that's a proper view of that. If you want to do that, I'm not going to yell at you about it. But the reason I've come down so hard on it in the public eye is because I got people not putting money in their 401k and good mutual funds. They're not buying a house. Instead, they're putting 100% of everything they have in the middle of the roulette wheel. And that's stupid. That's just ridiculous. You wouldn't do that with anything that doesn't have a long, wonderful track record. And generally where you want to be with investments, what Buffett talks about is true. I want an investment that is creating wealth, not changing in price. There's a difference. So when Home Depot stock goes up or Apple stock goes up, it's because they made a profit. It's because they put products in the marketplace. There was wealth created. When crypto goes up or gold goes up, it's just because somebody else wanted it more. It's not creating anything. It's what's called a commodity. And so you speculate on commodities. If you wanted to buy futures in corn, or if you remember the old movie with Eddie Murphy, Trading Places, right? Or frozen orange juice futures or something stupid. Was that what that was? It's kind of funny. But, if you want to play if you want to day trade in stocks, that's speculating. It's a short-term play, and it's just right over here next to gambling. It's not what you would do for your long-term, and so it should be money that you could set fire to. Okay. And you'd be okay with it. If you do that, then you can talk about, okay, how does Bitcoin work? What is the actual chain? How's the whole thing? Yeah, sure. I get all that. That's not the issue. The issue is I talk to 26-year-olds who go, I've invested everything I have in Bitcoin, and it's it's $50,000, and I don't have anything else but that. Well, why didn't you go to Vegas? Same dadgum deal, man. I mean, if you're pretty good at Texas Hold'em, you probably got as good a shot as you do at Bitcoin. So, it's going to be okay. But, I mean, if you chart Bitcoin and you don't see risk, you're dumb, because it's all over the freaking world. And that tells you it's a highly volatile, short-term play, and you're trying to ride this thing out. It's got a cool factor to it because it's technology, and it's a fad, and everybody wants to be in on it and all that kind of stuff. And the funny thing is, in my world, I get so much hate because these guys, it's like a cult. It's like if you don't believe in it, you're going to hell. You know what I'm saying? They're like, Ramsey's completely invalidated everything he's ever said because he doesn't believe in this. And I'm so emotionally and psychologically sold out on this one particular thing. And it's like George Camel, one of our guys, says it's like Mary Kay for young men. But, I don't care if you want to do it, but just be able to burn the amount of money you put in there in the middle of your kitchen table and not miss it.
Makes sense. Back to Gen Z. I mean, you got 400 and something Gen Zers working for you?
Over half our team is in their 20s.
Very, very innovative generation.
Very passionate.
Innovative.
We were talking about culture earlier. I mean, they'll charge the gates of hell with a water pistol, man. They're passionate. They're missional. And you give them a mission, you give them something, work that matters, and we're helping people, and they get enthused about it. They're crusaders. They're wonderful for Ramsey.
What are some things that you think they could work on? I'll tell you a frustration I have is our social media department. It's always, you have to have a Gen Zer running your social media. In my opinion, you shouldn't have anybody over 30 years old doing that.
Yeah, I don't think we do. I think all of them are in their maybe early 30s, but yeah.
We contract some stuff out, and time and time again, I think Gen Z is very entrepreneurial mindseted as well.
Yes.
It seems to be. And
because they've lost faith in the traditional systems. They're cynical about traditional systems. And sometimes in a toxic way, sometimes in a good, healthy way. Suspect of the man, almost like old hippies or something. Yeah.
One of the things that I see is when we contract stuff out to somebody from Gen Z is they seem to be, in my experience, which is very limited. It's not like we've gone through a million of these people or anything. But they seem to stack too much on their plate. Whereas is like they want to do our stuff, and then they add more, and then they add more, and then they add more, and then we see productivity and quality of the content creation start to diminish. I'm just curious if you have any insight on that or any advice.
No, I think it's just back to probably some real clear guidelines and accountability to certain behaviors that we want. And so what we've had to do with, it's not just Gen Z, but it does appear there, is in content creation, I don't understand this because I did not grow up with this thing in my hand. It's not native to me. When I was a kid, there was a rotary black dial phone on the wall with a cord, and so if you're talking to your girlfriend, the rest of the family was hearing it, but these guys, they've been content creators since they were 6. And now you're asking them to create content. And so what we've run into sometimes is they're just so accustomed to doing it. It's just part of their psyche. It's not. It's a developed skill set just to exist in their generation. And so sometimes we run into some arrogance with that. Like, because I've been doing this my whole life, I got socks older than you, but because I've been doing this my whole life, I'm going to tell you how to do this. We're like, no. Now we got confused. You work here, and so now we got to start again. You're really good. That's why we brought you in here, but you're not the only one who ever had an idea. And no, you just stepped out over the line with that piece of content, and it's not in our voice. It's not in our brand, and it's in your brand, but your brand's now going to conform to ours if you want to stay here. So, and it's accountability, and but it's very seldom it isn't a level of kind of arrogance, but it's not malice. It's not like they're being belligerent about it.
Yeah.
They just, it's native to them. And so it just requires some kind, clear leadership and accountability. And so, in the instance of what you talked about, what I might do if I was facing that is I would go, okay, look, if you want to take on some other projects, that's fine. Other than just ours, you're a freelancer. You don't work for us. But let me go ahead and warn you that we're looking at the quality of our stuff. And the instant you get too much on your plate, we're probably not going to be able to work with you anymore. So you really need to temper this and you need to manage it. And as soon as I see it, I'm going to bring it up again. And if I bring it up 2 times, it's starting to be a real issue. And I'll just be real clear like that and just not mean, but just go, I'm not okay with you filling your plate till the food falls off. And that's not cool. And I don't want to be the food that falls off. And I've had that. We've had that. And again, it comes from a positive place because they're so empowered. They think they could do anything because they can. They can just push a button. Crap happens. And our minds are like, wait a minute. They have it's an abundance mentality, but it's a weird one. It's versus a scarcity mentality where you and I are like, okay, resources are limited, act like it. And it doesn't even occur to them that you can't get something automatically because they have their whole life.
It's a damn good point. Let's talk about the Trump administration, the first couple of months here. How do you think it's going with the economics?
Well, economics, the reason you and I and Joe and Theo all did interviews with President Trump, and obviously Joe's the 800-pound gorilla in that, but we all have major top 10 podcasts, and we all, and then Joe came out and endorsed him, and probably 3 weeks before that I did, and I don't do presidential, I don't do politics, I don't do endorsement, but I did it mainly based on the economy. It was not the only thing, but I'm concerned about some of the same things other people were, border, woke, all that stuff, but happy about all that stuff. But the economics, and I said this on that show, an hour, because I knew I was going to get flooded with anti-Trump hate, because a fair portion of my audience are not conservatives. But the economics, oddly enough, is as much psychology as it is math. Let me give you an example. If I, as a small business owner, believe that things are going good and they're going to go good, I hire, I buy equipment, I stock up on inventory. So I create an economy. Hiring people creates a positive economy. So I'm acting based on my feeling, based on my psychology. And so it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that if enough people believe things are going to be good and they start taking actions as a result, they cause things to be good. And that's what I felt like, and I still think the Trump administration is going to deliver. It's what Ronald Reagan delivered when he turned the economy around. It was more about hope than it was some tax change.
Okay.
It was more about, this guy believes in America. I believe in America. He believes in capitalism. I believe in capitalism. And I believe that the free enterprise system and freedom and the ability to go open a business and live my dreams, I believe in that. He believes in that. He's going to cause that to happen. He's going to create an environment where that works. And so I'm going to go do it. And that's what we did under Reagan. And that's what Trump is delivering when he's making these fabulous vision casting statements about we're going into a golden era. He's speaking it into existence almost, he's trying to. And if he makes enough people believe it, they'll go do that. On the offside, then he's doing that fabulously. And then the games he's playing with the tariffs are scaring the crap out of the stock market. And the stock market's down. Since he's in office, and it had been up considerably before that. But there may be method to that madness. I don't know. I'm not privy to the inside workings of this administration. I don't play in that world. But there's one benefit that'll come from that is the bond market prices could go up, which will drive their interest rates down, which also will drive the economy. So if you drill, baby, drill, which is about somewhere around 1/7 of the national economy is energy related. If you get 1/7 of the economy, boom, and you get interest rates down and get real estate moving again, even if the stock market goes down, the stock market will come back because that'll stimulate everything. It'll get to moving. And it's not him physically doing anything. It's all of these words. And I know I I think it's obvious he's trying to do some other things with the tariffs other than tariffs. He's trying to get compliance on borders being shut down. He's trying to get compliance on them dropping their tariffs down, which they've ridiculously cut our throats for years. A lot of these countries have. The trade deficit and they're charging us 100% tariff, and we don't charge them any. And we're all sitting around, and now we decide we're going to charge them something. We act like we're the bad guys, which is ridiculous. So politically or policy-wise, that's ridiculous. But the offside is that it's destabilizing the markets because people are worried instead of inspired. If you can get more of them inspired than worried, the thing will pick up and it'll get moving. And I still think that's what's going to happen. I think the offset has just been the destabilization of all the tariff discussion has destabilized and offset some of the positive feelings that would have caused. So, in other words, a business person sitting today is going, okay, I think all this stuff's going to get really good over here, but I don't know what these tariffs are going to do to us. And so instead of hiring and buying equipment, they're going to kind of wait to see how that happens. So we've had a delayed effect on Trump having a positive effect on the economy, and this probably because of all the yak around the tariff. Because the actual physical tariffs that have actually happened is almost zero. It's just been discussion.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
Yeah. He's just throwing grenades over there and shaking things up. And, actually, how much have prices actually already been affected by a tariff? Almost zero so far. Because they get right up to it and then they go, oh, wait a minute, they conceded and we're going to wait. We're going to give it another 30 days. And, oh, well, that one, we're going to do that, but we're going to take out all these others. And, it's hard to follow, even if you charted it all, exactly what all is really happening. I guess if you're in the middle of it, you would, but I don't care enough to chart it, so I'm not going to fool with it. But I'm really excited about where we'll be in 12 months.
Okay.
Still am predicting that. Ramsey's gearing up. We're getting ready. We think there's a wave coming and we want to ride it.
Nice. What about, and I agree with what he's doing with the tariffs, and I like to see us stand up to this shit. On the flip side too, I also really like Doge and what they're doing.
Oh man, that's just incredible.
But, look, I don't know shit about economics or the economy or anything, but I do see, I just had Secretary of the VA on earlier this week. And, VA, nobody likes the VA. And it's overstaffed. And, just for some context, there's 480-something thousand employees at the VA. The U.S. Army has 450,000 active duty members. So they're definitely heavy. And they've gone through USAID and all these other places, and
it's a good idea gone bad.
They're cleaning out. I get what they're doing. They're trimming the fat. I think the fat needs to be trimmed. The national debt. Understand all that. My fear is the VA Secretary of the VA is looking to slash 83,000 jobs here. So when you look at the hundreds of thousands of jobs that are going to get cut from government positions, are we going to see, is that going to affect us?
No, because it's not enough in total jobs to cause like an unemployment crisis or something, which you would have to that would lead towards probably a recession, a contraction of the economy, because there's not enough people that have money from their job to spend, so they're spending, and that contracts, and that's what a recession is. So, but I think it's small enough. It's a little bit like, the old joke, major surgery is surgery that I had, minor surgeries you had. And so, when you lose your job, you're 100% unemployed. You don't really care what the unemployment rate is, and you really don't care about the philosophy of the Trump administration or Elon Musk's ideas. You just lost your job. And so that for that person that's losing their position, it's huge. But in ratio in the entire economy, the number of jobs, it's not going to be the end of the world. And it's offset by the savings, the deficit and the debt going down, and the chance we could actually get a balanced budget again. That's very productive for the economy, because every time there's a deficit, remember what happens is, okay, those lost jobs are harming the economy, but also if you don't have the lost job and that job creates extra debt. Deficit is financed by debt, right? When you spend more than you make, they finance it by debt. That debt is sucking money out of the economy. And so it becomes a parasite. It's a tick on the butt of the economy, sucking the blood out of it. And so that's the problem with the overspending is it pulls money out of the currency, which if it's out here moving around between your business, my business, and we're buying, we're spending money at the restaurant and we're going on vacation and we're buying a Southwest Air ticket and we're doing all the other things. We're moving the money around. They put it on the shelf, and now the economy's smaller. And so that's not as bad because of all these lost jobs. So there's an offset there.
Okay.
So, again, I think what little trouble would be more than offset by that. And the other thing, it has to be offset by what we're talking about earlier. Okay, what does the average business person like me that's got, a substantial business, but not a huge business. I'm not General Motors. Okay. I'm not Apple, but somebody running a business like mine, which 54% of the economy is companies that are 500 people and smaller. Small business is the mathematical backbone of the American economy. So the guy that has a heat and air company that's got 400 people and a little small fleet of trucks and they fix heat and air on people's houses, what's he looking at? Okay. He feels a lot more positive about government waste being chopped off at the knees than he does negative of some of those folks losing a job.
Okay.
And again, he's the one making the decision to spend or to hold his cash because there's a storm coming. Am I going to invest because there's sunshine coming, or is there a tornado coming and I got to put plywood on the windows and pile cash and get ready? Because when he piles cash in macro, when a whole bunch of he's piles cash because they think a storm is coming, that freezes the economy shut. But when they believe the sun is coming, and they believe more in Elon Doge causing the sun is coming than he does those lost jobs.
Okay.
So I think it's an offset. Both are very real, and they're very personal if you're in them. I'm not trying to discount if you work for the VA and you're going to lose your job. I'm not happy for you personally. I'm happy that our nation is addressing waste, though, because 100% of the intelligent human beings walking around realize that the waste is really freaking ridiculous.
Yeah. I'm with you. It's just, I think it's something we have to go through no matter what.
Oh, God, it's like, and the fact that they're actually doing it, not talking about it, for the first time in modern history, everybody's talked about it. No one's ever done anything. Not in the GOP and not in the Dems. None of them have ever done anything. It takes this wild animal to go in there with a dadgum machete and a bunch of Gen Zs with algorithms and start stacking those cash flows and looking at this going, well, look at there. We've got a transgender college that we just put $150 million in India or whatever. I made that up. But I mean, this stuff is coming out. It's just, it's not even,
it's insane.
It's like science fiction. It's so bizarre.
Yeah.
It's not even a debate about how whacked it is. It's just whacked.
Let's move into your book. Build a business you love. What's the premise of it?
Well, we talked earlier as when we first started talking about the Total Money Makeover that you read, and it goes through the 7 baby steps. If you'll go through follow that clear path, it's the shortest distance between normal finances, which is broken in debt, to wealthy. If you follow those 7 baby steps, it's a clear path, and it's proven. Tens of millions of people have done that now. And so when we're working with small businesses, and EntreLeadership is one of our brands that we work with small businesses. I love small business people, and I am one. I've been one my whole life. I believe it's the free enterprise system, and I just like the type of man and woman that does that. They're my people. I just like them. And they're no nonsense. They get crap done, and the same things make them afraid or mad that make me afraid or mad. And so I just connect immediately. And I am one. I've been running a business almost my whole life. So we started working with these businesses, and in most cases, what we were teaching them was stuff like core values or how to hire and fire, or some basic marketing stuff, some basic accounting stuff, some basic finance stuff that they weren't doing because they were too busy doing the business rather than actually running the components of the business. So we're teaching them all of that and have been for almost 20 years. And I have a #1 best-selling book called Entrepreneurship that was the playbook. It was the Super Bowl playbook that we used to run our business, to grow it from a card table in my living room to where it is today. How did we do that? We did these things. And so we've been teaching them and coaching them, about 10,000 businesses now we've worked with, and been doing events for them for years, and big leadership events and that kind of stuff. We've been doing, again, the best-selling book. We've got software. We got all kinds of stuff to help them, apps, all that. So one of the things we figured out about 4 or 5 years ago, we started working on it, was that businesses that win go through 5 distinct stages. And there are 6 drivers of business that drive you through those stages. And it helps immensely. It becomes the baby steps for business if you know what those are and what it takes to level up and go through them. You don't necessarily want to go through them super fast. That's not the point. On the baby steps, you'd want to go through them as fast as you could, like you said, sell all your junk and, we move on, get out of debt. Now we move on up a step. Now we start saving and investing and that kind of stuff. With this, it's more the maturation of the business cycle as you go along. And it is what we went through. And then we started observing it's what they were going through. And then we figured out that if we can show them that this clear path exists, that it gives you hope that you can go through it. When you're just out there wandering along and you don't even realize there is a path, or you don't even realize there is a stage, you don't do the stuff to level up to get better. And so once we start showing them this system, these 5 stages, and they go, okay, I'm at stage 2. What do I need to do to get 3? Okay, this is what you do. And here's your 6 drivers, and here's how that applies in this situation. And we figure we've gone around those 6 drivers at Ramsey in 30 years. Probably, as we went through the 5 stages, we probably went around those drivers probably somewhere around 10 times.
10 times.
Yeah, in 30 years. And because every time you go through, you get a different version of it, okay? And so, driver number 3 is people. And so, the way we hired and fired when we started was way different than the way we hire and fire today. So every time you come around to people and you go, okay, I'm going to get better with culture, I'm going to get better with hiring and firing, I'm going to get better with attracting the right talent. But then I move around it, and that leads me into planning, which is another one that leads me, and you start going through it. Then you go, okay, when I go up as another stage, it's a whole different set of problems with people that I didn't have before. And so I have to have a whole different level of skills with that I didn't have before, or a whole different level of planning than I had before. If you're planning a small thing, it's not as hard as planning a bigger thing, obviously. So, the drivers cycle through and we end up going through those. So, stage 1 is when you open a business, when you first start, and sometimes people stay there the whole time, God help them, is the treadmill operator, which is what it sounds like. You're on a treadmill.
This is the drivers or the stages?
No, this is stages. Stage 1 is the treadmill operator. And so when you start, all of us are treadmill operators. And the treadmill operators run, don't feel like you're getting anywhere. But we're real passionate about it, and we're going hard. And you get home at night, and you flop back on the couch, and your wife says, what'd you do today? And you go, I don't know, but I worked my butt off. And you're just working like a crazy person. And you're responsible for all the producing of everything. If you don't do it, it doesn't get done. Producing, you're responsible for all the revenue. If you don't come to work, the place doesn't make any money. So in a sense, you don't even own a business. You just own your own job. Because if you take a vacation, everything falls apart. If you're not there that day, if you're sick, everything falls apart. And so it's very self-dependent, which is kind of gratifying. It makes you important for a minute. It's also exhausting. And you don't want to stay there. It's not a good, you will flame out if you stay in that one. But everybody starts there, 100%. Now, you may only be there 2 weeks. You may be smart enough to start hiring people or have enough capital to start hiring people immediately. You may be, this is not your first go round on a business, and so you're better at time management. But the thing you do to level up from treadmill to Pathfinder, which is the next one, is you have to get time management going. And you start talking about stuff like, I was talking about earlier that I was doing 16-hour days. And I'm on the radio, and I'm doing overhead projector teaching Financial Peace University at night, and I'm at work all day long. And my wife was like a single mom for a short period of time there for a couple of years. And we're talking about work-life balance, and that's treadmill. If I didn't go do the radio, there was nothing. If I didn't go do the teaching that night, and I remember standing in that Holiday Inn one night, and I had a kidney stone. And I'm completely covered in sweat, but I had to finish the lesson. Then I didn't finish the lesson, I had to start giving refunds, and I couldn't give refunds. I had to get the money. And so I finished at 11 o'clock at night and went to the emergency room. And so that's what you do in the treadmill stage, right? You suck it up, buttercup, and you get it done. But you can't stay there. It's not sustainable for your family. It's not sustainable for your health. It's not a good business model. So you start to learn to manage time and get intentional and go, I'm going to switch it off when I get home, and I'm going to hire some people. And I'm not the Messiah. Other people can be important too and bring ideas and carry some of this weight. And I can have other people that produce revenue and other people that produce the actual goods and services. So I don't have to be the producer and the revenue producer. And then you get to that next stage. And so that's what this whole thing's about, is just walking through those stages. And
what's the next stage?
You go from there to Trailblazer, and Trailblazer it's a fuzzy middle. It's the middle stage, and it's kind of whacked. You're really kind of getting your traction. Things are starting to happen. You've actually got some other people on the team that are intelligent and you can count on. You're starting to build your band of brothers and sisters and that are going to get her done, and all that stuff. But you really suck at systems. You suck at processes. Too much stuff is manual, and it could be automated. Your accounting software usually sucks at that stage. You're not really keeping good books. The books aren't automated. They don't automatically produce the payroll at the end of the month. You're having to pull stuff out. We had like 22 spreadsheets going and an accounting system. And then we would take the numbers off of those and stick them in the accounting system and then try to create payroll once a month. And it was this ridiculous thing. It was just very unsophisticated. But it was just, all it was we had scaled up a very primitive system, and it was now a very large primitive system. And so our systems and processes were broken, and we weren't doing hardly any planning. We were very tactical. It was just like, whatever's in front of us, get it done. Whatever's in front of us, get it done. We didn't think about a year from now. We didn't think about 2 years from now. We had to make payroll Friday. And we were just trying to make sure, get the dadgum receivables collected. I need the money in here. That advertiser hadn't paid us. Why is he still on the air? This is stupid. And I don't know, and why we got a collections problem? Did we sell them wrong? Did they understand that they had to pay us? I mean, what's the, and all this kind of stuff. And it's just like, there's a lot of chaos, but there's a lot of business happening. So it's kind of exciting, but it's very chaotic. And so you got to put the systems in place. You got to put the processes in place. And entrepreneurs like me, this is the part where I really push back. I never want to be corporate America. Mm-hmm. Negative parts of corporate America. I mean, there's big companies that are good companies, but corporate America to me is bureaucratic bullcrap. And, some little twerp his little domain over here is interrupting business getting done because he wants to protect his little thing. And we're not doing that. So, accounting said we can't do that. Bull crap, get it done. The legal teams, no, they work for me. I don't work for them. And so that's the kind of guy I push him back in the middle of that Trailblazer stage. But we had to get enough governance to get the quality consistent and to get the systems that were broken fixed. And we were like filling out pieces of paper. We were killing trees, and it should have been in a dadgum computer program, and that kind of stuff. So we kept pushing and pushing and pushing. The other thing we didn't do is we didn't do any strategic thought. As I said, we were all tactical. Everything's hands on, hands on, hands on, hands on. So I hired some guys and some gals that had an MBA, had a master's in business, and I don't have that. I've got an undergrad, but and I started realizing as I talked to different MBAs at other companies that we were coaching, and I was talking to these guys, that I don't know all the details about getting an MBA. I mean, I know basically what it is, but I did figure out that roughly 100% of the MBA programs do a really good job of teaching strategic thought. Get above the problem and get the 30,000-foot view, then you know how to navigate. And rednecks like me, I'm just plowing through. And the guy goes, look, if you would turn right and then turn left, you don't have to kick the barn door down every time. You could just, it's easy, right? And you got to get above it to see that, though. And so, you just took off, put the pedal to the metal, and hope you find Florida. How about a map? And if you're going to go, you ought to have a map. And so that's their thought. And so I always laugh and say the MBAs that we hired, they taught me strategic thought. It was not my nature because I'm very much in your face, in the moment, entrepreneurial, tactical. Go mow the grass, collect the money, that kind of thing. And so they taught me strategic thought, and I taught them how to work. But anyway, that's our joke around there. But it's also true. But so we, because we work our butts off. And so that kind of stuff then started to help us move to the next stage, which is the peak performer stage. And that's the fun one. Man, you're just printing money. You're just bailing money. This stuff starts to come together. It gels. The culture in the team starts to come together. You quit hiring doofuses because your hiring process gets better. You quit keeping them because your firing process is better. Your systems and processes, you start to realize the importance of them, but they work for you. You don't work for them. You're not a bureaucrat. We stand on principle. We've got our core values. We know what we're doing. We're serving the customer. And now all we're doing is making each product better, or new products that are even better, or concepts. And we can add things to the portfolio. So we start adding a high school curriculum, or we add, a budgeting piece of software, an app. We can start doing that because we're working in just strength now. We've got cash because you're making more money at this stage than ever. And you never dreamed you'd make this much money when you get to this stage. It's a lot. And you can make good money in the others, but this is like, and I can go home at 5 and there's stuff happening in the organization that I have no idea happened. And it's all the exact right stuff, and I'm happy about it. I don't have to be in every little detail because I've got a team of leaders that I've trained that have trained a team of leaders. And, we've got a bit of a chain of command, so to speak, going. And I need to know what's going on. And I get reports on different things. I've got accounting reports coming in, but I don't have to be in every meeting. I don't have to make every decision because they can already finish my sentences. They know what Dave would do. They know what that owner of that business would do. The only downside of peak performer is you start to believe your own clippings. And if you're not careful, you keep doing only the same thing and you don't iterate. Because if you don't iterate in this market, you die. If you're not constantly getting better, constantly changing, constantly polishing, constantly changing, constantly looking for a new thing to add while you're being successful. But if you keep running the same play, all the other teams figure out the play. And so you can't rest. And the problem is you're so dadgum good right now, and there's so much money stacking that you start to think I'm really good, and that's dangerous. So you got to constantly give the old shock to the system, get the cattle prod out, and just go, okay, reset. We're going for excellence. We're going to break it before it's broken, baby. We're going to reset, and you got to constantly re-energize the whole place to raise this level of excellence. And then the last one is just legacy stage. So succession planning. How are you going to hand this off? Are you going to sell it? Are you going to quit and shut it down? What's the end game? And you start planning for that. I started doing that 16 years ago. Started our succession planning and our, how are we going to hand this off? How's it going to survive after Dave? Because it's not mine. I'm just the manager. So it really shouldn't quit. God's whole thing that he built here shouldn't just dry up just because I die. That's a bad idea. And so we got to start working on legacy. So that's really the 5 stages you go through. But there's leveling up and a lot of detail, a lot of little nuanced things that you do in there to go to work through and that's in 34 years, that's the 5 stages we've been through. And we've watched as companies are going while we coach them, they go from treadmill, to Pathfinder to Trailblazer. And when they're sitting in Trailblazer, it's really obvious to us then that, here's your problem. You don't have a system. You're doing this thing, you're pulling this out of your ear all the time instead of, this is a replicatable process. You don't have to make it up brand new every morning. And so we just know how to coach them and know how to sit them down. So we said we better put that in a book, because that clear path gives people hope, and it'll increase the speed of success and the quality of life for the guy and gal running a small business right now.
Well, you had mentioned the 6 drivers. Mm-hmm. Let's go through those real quick.
Okay. First one's personal. When you start a business, most people think that the thing you start with is product. And you can, and that's normal. You got to, okay, I got an idea. I want to start a podcast. I got an idea. I want to build a widget. I want to go into this certain kind of a business. I want to be in the heat and air business. I want to be a veterinarian. You got a certain idea. That's product, the service or the actual physical gummy bears that you create, right? But you don't really start there. If you do, you're going to have a problem. But it's okay to have that in mind, because that's usually the thing that gets you out of bed and causes you to go do the business idea. But it really does, before you get to product, it really does backtrack all the way to the top. What the first driver is personal. And the personal issue is this. John Maxwell talks about, in his book, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, which is his best-selling book and my favorite of his, the number 3 law is the law of the lid. I'm the lid on my business. And so that's personal. Personal growth. The growth of my business is dependent upon my personal growth. It will never get bigger if I don't. And so I was 33 when we started this. I'm 64. Okay. And so obviously the guy that started this couldn't run this today. He's not the same guy. I've read a bazillion books over those 30 years. I've had a bazillion experiences. I've had a lot of smart people yell at me and tell me how stupid I am and I need to do this different, and they were right. And they were good enough friends to tell me the truth. And I fixed things, and stuff would break, and we'd do a CSI on it and go, okay, why did the patient die? And, what's the autopsy results? And, well, that's what happened. Or how did crazy get in the building? Put a lock on that door. And so, we go through that stuff, and we get better. So, when you listen to a Shawn Ryan podcast interviewing some of the neatest stories in the world, if you're a business leader and you're watching this, mind that podcast for the leadership principles that you're hearing in that, or the life principles that you're hearing in that. If you go to a leadership conference, for God's sakes, take 7,000 notes and be going to a leadership conference. Read a book this year on what you want to get better at, like leadership or business structure, or who's writing in the business space that's smart. Learn from them. And so the problem with my business is always the guy in my mirror. That's the bad news. The good news is the solution of my business is always that guy in my mirror. That's very personal. And, that's kind of what you and I were talking about when it was just you and me in the room at the house one night or one afternoon, is that never stops. You can hire a CEO or a president or a COO, but still, if you're the guy, you still got to get better. And one of the ways you can get better is hire people smarter than you. I mean, we've got somewhere around 400 people that do software engineering. I've never written a line of code in my life. I don't even know what they do. But I know that they are creating things that create revenue and help to other people. Mm-hmm. And that's my job. It's not to learn to be a coder.
Does it scare you when you don't know an aspect of your business?
Okay. It scares the crap out of me.
Me too.
but it doesn't keep me from being responsible for it. And so, like, I dropped into one of those meetings, because those are all Gen Zs just about writing that stuff, and they're smart. And I dropped into those meetings, and they're freaking like the military. They've got acronyms for everything, 3-letter words, 5-letter words for everything in there. And it's a whole different language. And I'm sitting in this meeting for about 10 minutes, and I think they might as well have been speaking German. And finally, I raised my hand and said, hey, guys, I'm just going to be really transparent right now. I'm a little bit scared because I pay all y'all and I have no idea what you have said for the last 10 minutes. Would y'all take a minute and humor me and tell me what you've been talking about? I might be able to add value, but I might also just be a little calmer if I actually know what you're doing. And I don't have to know every detail, and I'm not asking you to, I'm not getting down your business. I just want to learn from you. What have you all been discussing? And they said, oh, and then they told me, and I understood. And I went, okay. And it was something about the friction and the conversion rates were dropping on this particular web page. We weren't converting. We were losing the customers. And because of the way the thing was built, it was poorly designed. And they're like, okay, this is this. And, and they were dropping all these acronyms around basically making the sale. Now, I know how to make the sale. I can help with that. But I can't help you if I don't know what you're talking about. So, yeah, it's scary. But it's also, I don't have to know. But in that case, I was just curious and I wanted to learn. But I wasn't really holding them up. I wasn't the bottleneck. And if you're the bottleneck, that's where you get the problem in personal. And so I've got to know enough about accounting to make sure the accounting team's doing their job. I got to know enough about the results of the software engineers to know that I'm actually getting an ROI on that freaking $50 million in payroll, right? I've got to know enough about marketing to be able to look. I got to know, enough to look at the social media and go, this is low quality. I don't have to be a social media expert, but I got to go, I'm not cool with this video. It's jumping around all over the place. It's bothering me. It's half-butt quality. I know you quick edit it or whatever. It's driving me nuts. That's a discussion I had yesterday. And so that's the way everybody's doing it. And I said, well, that's exactly the reason we shouldn't do it. And so, I can bring that to the table still, but I don't. So yeah, that's, but it's normal for something to feel, but if you only do stuff that you know how to do, it'll never get big. You got to bring team people and know how to do stuff you don't know how to do. So I need a good kicker. I need a good, right guard, left guard. I need a good defensive lineman, even if I'm the quarterback. And I don't have to do all that. And so I need my CFO is, and this freaking Dave Ramsey. I mean, I know the money stuff, but my CFO's dadgum genius. He's smart. I mean, he comes in, we get to do math riddles and stuff together. I just love it. But thank God that I got somebody like that on the team. So I can hand off, and that gives me the ability to scale, the ability to grow. But I've got to grow enough. I've got to be willing to learn strategic thought to take me up. I've got to be willing to get better at those things. That's the personal. The next one's purpose. And purpose is, why are you here? And I tell leaders all the time in business, if the only reason you're in business is to make money, you will not make it. You will quit. You've got to have something beyond that. You and I have both talked off camera that we thoroughly enjoy what we do. And one of the reasons we enjoy it is we're making a difference. I mean, you brought some stories to light in this room that needed to be done. And that was not, you didn't do that for money. You did that because it's really fun. And by God, it was the right thing to do. These are stories people needed to know. It was ridiculous that they weren't told. And Shawn freaking Ryan is who told the story. And that's your purpose, right? I mean, and you got to have purpose, and you got to identify it, and then you got to hire people that plug into that purpose. And some of the stuff on the walls around this room are they're keepsakes from people whose story got told, who would not have been told were you not here. And if the guys on the camera don't understand that, if they think they just run a camera, then you're screwed.
Yeah.
And so you got to have purpose. And the same thing at Ramsey, man. I mean, if we hear somebody met God because they went through one of our things and they got out of debt and then they heard we were Christians, so they investigated it, that everybody at Ramsey cries. It makes us cry because somebody met Jesus, because that's our purpose, one of them. Our purpose is, we teach number one cause of divorce in North America today is money fights and money problems. We can get you on the same budget and get you out of debt and get the stress out of your house. And then you walk in our office and you go, you guys saved our marriage. Yeah, man, game on. We didn't save your marriage. You saved your marriage, but we, by God, showed you how. That's awesome. That's our purpose. And you got to have that, and you got to say it, and you got to look at it, and everybody's got to be plugged into it. And that's a driver of the business. If you think you're in the heat and air business and all you do is make money by going in somebody's house and turning on their thermostat, you're not going to stay in business. And you think, oh, this is a great way to make some money. You're not going to stay in business because you're in it for the wrong reason. You're in it to extract rather than to add value to the world that you live in. And so, yeah, we're going to get to product, and you can start there, but you better go back and take care of you. You better go to purpose, and that'll bring you to people. And you start adding the right ones, the right hiring and firing. Get the right, as my friend Jim Collins says in book Good to Great, get the right people on the bus, the wrong people off the bus, the right people on the right seats on the bus. And that is like a full-time job. It's like I spend 80% of my calories on that.
Really?
Yeah. It's people, man. They're our greatest blessing and our greatest curse. It's a constant thing. And some of my greatest, most wonderful things are the people that I've gotten to do this journey with that are on my team. And some of the biggest pains and scars I have in my life are from the people that have been on my team. But it's part of it, man. Your other choice is don't dance. Man, I want to dance. I'm going to get out there. I don't care if I look foolish. Let's have at it. So, yeah, let's do it. So, yeah, that's people are a constant thing, and they really are a great joy by and large. But you always got that, that one or two story, like we talked about earlier, there's one or two or three that, man, I must have been an idiot. I hired them. And worse than that, I kept them. Ugh. And so, yeah, I had one guy tell us in entree, we were standing in the hallway, he goes, yeah, man, my team, he said, they're awful. And I said, well, you suck, don't you? And he said, what do you mean? You hired them, and then you kept them. And then you're sitting here whining about them. Whose fault is this? It's yours. So, yeah, your leader has to deal with the people. You don't have a choice. People's the deal.
What is your strategy with hiring and firing?
Our hiring is ridiculous. Might not be funny in here, but the line we always use is it's harder to get on with us than it is the CIA or the FBI. I mean, it's hard. We put you through the ringer. It used to be a whole bunch it got to be too many interviews. We got it up to about the average 15 interviews before you got hired. That was silly.
15 interviews?
Yeah, we got it down to about 7 now. That we got out of control, but we just got so paranoid about making a bad hire that we wanted to spend the ridiculous amount of energy and time to get a good hire. And but we do about 7 interviews minimum now. The first one is a 30-minute, quick, not 32 minutes, not 31 minutes, 28 to 30 minutes, cultural review. And we spend about 10 minutes telling them who we are. Here's our 14 things. Here's who we are. And if you don't want to do this, you're not going to want to be here. One is we work at work. We don't have remote work. We work at the office. We believe being in the proximity of each other is valuable. And productivity, creativity, communication, everything is enhanced when you're physically in the same space. And so even now it's kind of being popular because like Elon's telling everybody to work at work. But we work at work. And if you don't want to do that, you can opt out right now. We only got 28 minutes invested in this discussion. So, and then we spend about 20 minutes listening to them. So 2 ears, 1 mouth is the ratio. There's 30 minutes, 20 minutes listening, 10 minutes talking. And they don't let me do those because I talk too much. But, and I'm not that good at it. But you listen and you try to determine, is this person going to fit? Are they engaged in behaviors that don't fit here? Are they, for instance, if all they can do is whine about how horrible the last place they worked is, then they're going to do that about you. Mm-hmm. So, if that's how you spend your first 10 minutes in an interview, talking how negatively about the last place, you're probably going to do the same thing with us. It's probably, we're probably done. Or if they go, I hate Christians, you probably won't want to work here because the guy that owns this place. And, I'm a gun guy, as you know, but not everybody knows that. And because I'm supposed to be the get out of debt guy, but I mean, I'm a firearms enthusiast. I'm not anywhere near some kind of elite level or anything like that, but I like to shoot and I like to collect and all that kind of stuff. And I carry every day, all the time. And so they ask, our guys will ask, our CEO carries a gun. I've never seen it, but he carries a gun everywhere he goes. That's legal, that he can do that. And how you feel about that? And, some people go, I don't want to work here. And that's good. It's good we decide that right then. You're not a culture fit, because I do. And I'm not changing that for you to come to work here. So, and as a matter of fact, a whole bunch of people in the building carry. So, and we actually have this wonderful training program, and we do tactical training and fun stuff, and it's great team building. And go to my farm and run 1,000 rounds and learn how to actually handle a handgun and all that. It's kind of fun, but not everybody wants to do that, and that freaks people out. And if you're one of those people that's gun freaked out, then I'm a Tennessee redneck. I've had a gun in the back window of my truck since I was 12. I mean, come on. So that's just the way I grew up, and I'm not worried about it. I'm not freaking. It's not making a political statement. It's just an actual fact. So do you want to work here? And so we throw that out. We'll throw out different things like that and just ask a question. It's not like saying you have to do it, but this is who you're coming to work with. So you need to know. And so that little 30-minute interview, that gets rid of, we either can them or, I don't think 1 in 10 make it through that.
No kidding.
Yeah. Because they thought that we were something that we're not. Or we thought they were something they weren't. And we don't hire people based on skill. Skill is important, but it is trumped by cultural fit, value system, enthusiasm, crusader. I give somebody that actually freaking cares deeply, and they lean in, and they've got medium level skill. We can take a C player like that and make them an A plus player. But I can't take an A plus player. They'll perform at a D level if they don't fit in.
Yeah.
And if they think it's just a job, if you're here to collect a check, a job, how late can I come to work? How much can I steal while they're there? How many times can I be on my Facebook account instead of getting my freaking work done? And then I want to leave early too. Oh, and I need extra PTO because my dog needs his toenails done. Oh, geez, get out of my life. Life's too short. And how much can I take? How much of a parasite can I be? And the odd thing is people will reveal that pretty easily. And you go, you ain't going to fit in. Because the people here, we work and we care and we love each other and we got each other's back and we're getting this crap done. And, pretty quickly you go there. So we get past that and then we start actually getting into it. But we've never hired anyone based on the number of degrees. I had one guy working for me a long time ago. He came into my office. He said, he had 3 graduate level degrees. He was a smart dude. And he goes, I've got this degree, this degree, this degree. And he goes, in corporate America, I could make double what I make here. And I said, good, you should. And he said, well, I need to talk about, getting a raise. And I said, we don't give raises based on degrees, dude. This is a small business. Your raise is effective when you are. When you kill something, drag it home, I'll share it with you. But collecting degrees is not, you're not a thermometer. I mean, this is not what we do.
You're not a thermometer.
I mean, come on, man. It's like, this is not a thing. So we, and sweet guy, and he worked there probably, I can see his face right now. I don't know his name, but he's a good guy. I still talk to him occasionally. He's been gone probably 10 years. But he really had bought into that lie. And a lot of people, when you're hiring, buy into the lie that the degree matters or the certification matters or what I made at the other place matters. It doesn't. It doesn't. What matters more is it matters only to the extent you can add value to the place you're coming. So, I've got a 4-year business degree. It's a wonderful degree. I'm glad I got it. I use components of it almost every day. But the actual degree itself has never made me a dime. The tools it put in my belt, now those tools are valuable. Extra knowledge that I didn't have, that's valuable. So that's the hiring. And we're looking for people that fit in, that are a we, and that are fired up. We love it if it's not necessary, but if they've gone through something we do and it's changed their life and they want to do that for others by working on the team, that's a crusader. That's a really good indicator that you're going to get on up in the interview process. And then the last thing we do is very controversial. Weird. But I figured out when I went broke, we've owned real estate that my wife never saw. I was out doing deals, and she's like, whatever you want to do, honey. Southern Belle, right? And you got it, man. And I didn't. I did some stupid butt stuff. And there were other times we did stuff, and she's like, well, I knew that wasn't going to work. I'm like, well, why didn't you say something? You know, and she always had an opinion after. I told you so. You know, like, where were you when we were making the decision? So I found that in Scripture. And I didn't, when I went broke, and I was studying this money principles. And a money principle is this: who can find a virtuous wife? For her worth is far above rubies. The heart of her husband safely trusts her because she's virtuous. She's not a barking chihuahua, not a nag. She cares. She's wise. The heart of her husband safely trusts her, and he will have no lack of gain. You want to build wealth? Listen to your virtuous wife. Okay. I wasn't doing that, and I went broke, so maybe I need to add that to the get out of debt list or the be on a budget list or whatever. There's a thing I do. So we quit when we went broke, and I found that when I was studying all this stuff. I said, okay, I don't make major decisions without Sharon. We'll fight about it. We might not agree about it, but we're going to talk about it, and we're going to come into agreement, or we don't move forward. When in doubt, don't. So I'm not going to go make a $10,000 investment, and she says that's a bad idea. Never doing that. Sounds like I'm henpecked, but I'm not, because we argue about it sometimes. But not much anymore, but back in the old days we did. And so if we get ready to do a large gift with some generosity moves with our foundation, our family foundation, Sharon and I look at it. I don't do that. She doesn't do it by herself. We do it together. We're a unit. We're married. And now you are one. You know, the preacher said, he didn't say, and now you are a joint venture. And so I was running it like a joint venture. Like, I'm smart. I can just go do this. I don't need my wife. And she would say, I'm an independent woman. I can do whatever I want. Yeah, you are, but this is stupid. You know, maybe we ought to work together. Hello. And the people that build wealth work together. That's the data actually shows us nowadays. So we quit making big decisions without that. And then when I got ready to hire our first person, I don't know about you, man, but when I hired the very first one, that was scary as crap.
Yeah.
I felt the weight of the responsibility for that family that was counting on me to give them the money in payroll that I had promised them. It scared the pee out of me. And the second one was easier. The third one was easier. The 3,000th was really easy. But the first one scared me. And I went, this is a big decision. Sharon has never worked at Ramsey. She's never worked at the office, ever. But we don't make big decisions at the office without Sharon getting involved. So if we got ready to do a huge purchase at the office, like I remember one time in the early days, we bought a phone system for $14,000, and that was like, woo, nobody has phone systems anymore. But like Sharon has to come down to the office and sit and look at the phone system with my 3 leaders and me, and we make this decision, and she signs off on $14,000 back in the day. Because that was a lot of money then. It was a big decision. I don't make big decisions without Sharon. So we don't hire people without Sharon in the early days. So when we got ready to get hired.
That's interesting.
The last step today still is what we call the spousal interview. And so the last step is, after we're pretty dadgum sure this is God. We're pretty sure this is a good move for everybody. God's got us all together. But we're going to go out to dinner informally with the person we're hiring and their spouse, and the leader and their spouse. In the old days, it was Sharon and me would take you to dinner. We probably did the first 100 hires that way with just me and Sharon.
Wow.
And we go to dinner, and my wife is not, I'm the talker, obviously. So she's pretty chill, kick back. And the video I've seen on your wife would be similar. You know, you'd have a lot to say about this place, and your wife would be watching and listening and learning. And then somebody taught me, I don't know where it came from, not to ask my wife as we were driving away what she thought. I asked her how she feels. And her Holy Spirit, women's intuition, she could smell crazy a mile away. And I'm like a Labrador Retriever. I like everybody. So I'm hiring them. Let's do it. You know, and she's like, I like the guy and his wife's sweet, but I just got a bad, and she's from East Tennessee. It's Southern, right? So it's a 7-syllable word. I got a bad feeling 100% of the time. But go ahead. Don't worry about it. I just tell you, I got a bad feeling. And a couple times I would say, okay, you think we ought to do it or not? Yeah, go ahead. 100% of those were gone in 4 months.
No shit.
Something blew up. And the other thing is she almost never said that. I mean, 3 times out of 100, something like that. Most of the time she said, yeah, this is great. Let's just do it. How you feel? Oh, I feel really good. I like it. I actually like his spouse better, which probably means he's probably a good person because he's smart enough to get her, And so she just, that's a conversation. All right, let's pray about it tonight. So we pray about it. Any change tomorrow morning, let me know. And then we call them. We tell the couple, y'all go home, pray about it, and talk about it. And I would look at their spouse and say, I want you to tell him if you have a bad feeling. I want you to tell her if you have whoever it is we're interviewing, right? And for some reason, that is very controversial with some of the people out there in the hate land. But I don't know why it's controversial. It's just like I love my wife and I trust her and I like her better than I like anybody I've ever hired. And so I'm going to want her on the team, but that's weird. But I've had some funny stuff happen. We had one old boy who was a party guy and, we are regular people, but we're not like wild animal party people. And this guy was drinking and doing drugs and doing all this other stuff at a real high level, apparently. But he was smart and he was really good. And he's a fun guy. He was a great guy. But we kind of went through all this stuff. And his wife was country as cornbread. And she didn't say a thing all night. And I'll never forget, we were at the steakhouse right down here. I could name it, and I won't. But it's right over the hill here. You would know it. And I ordered key lime pie for dessert. I'll never forget. My fork went to the key lime pie. In other words, we'd been there an hour and a half. The woman hadn't said a word. And she says, y'all are real religious, ain't you? And I said, well, if you mean like the Pharisees or jerks about Bible or something, no. If you mean we love Jesus Christ, yes. He ain't gonna fit in.
Oh, man.
I started laughing. The guy that had another leader and his wife with me, they started laughing. My wife is looking at me like I've lost my mind. We're just laughing because me and my leader, and even the guy starts laughing because she just spoke truth. She kept us because he was a friend that the leader and I knew from the broadcast business. And we really wanted him to come on because he's a fun guy. He's real creative. And we were just overlooking the fact that he ain't going to fit in. And this woman spoke. She dropped a grenade in the middle of the table, dropped a bomb in the middle of the table. It was fabulous. We didn't hire him. We're still friends to this day, friends with her to this day. But that's what it's for. Because we all get all excited about the positives that can happen and we overlook the obvious things. And the spouse will sometimes, if they're wise and strong and their voice is used to being heard, will speak into it, and it's fabulous. That's our best part of our hiring process.
Man, I love to hear that.
But it gets it ticks people off. They're like, you don't have any right. I got all kinds of right. My name's on the side of the building. What are you talking about? I got a right. But oh well.
I'm going to implement that. I love that. That's a great idea. That is a great idea. What about firing? How fast do you fire?
For extreme misbehavior instantaneously, but that almost never happens. Somebody steals, I don't really need to negotiate. That's just, just sad day, we're done. But most of the time it would be misbehavior or incompetence would be one of the buckets, and those things are things you can work on. And so we have an accountability system where leaders always are meeting with their team doing one-on-ones. Once a week, you do one-on-one, or once every 2 weeks for an hour. And that's where you listen to what's going on with the actual work. You hear things personal about the person. How can we help you? How can we support you? What's going on? How can we love you well? And here's some things we got to work on. You got to course correct. So there's never anything that's just like once a year we do a review. No, we're once a week or once every 2 weeks. We're talking about life and business and how's it going. And, you're a salesman, you're not making any sales calls. Not going to work. You have to get the sales calls up. How can I help you get that done? Is there an issue with your technology? What's the problem? Let's get it going. Let's get it going. Let's get it going. And so we begin some basic course correction and confrontation there. Or, you can't seem to get here before 10 o'clock in the morning. That's not cool. We actually work here. You need to get your butt in the office, and what's the problem? What, you got an issue? Childcare problem? How can we help you? Tell me what's going on. If there's a real reason, let's talk about it. But I didn't get out of bed ain't cool, So you just basic stuff, right? You're talking about it all the time. And then the next thing you would do is you would escalate it and begin what we call a difficult conversation. And a difficult conversation, without going through the whole seminar bit on it that we teach, but is just you sit down and say, hey, we're both currently sitting on the same side of the table. I'm on your team. I'm not across the table from you. This is not a correction or a negotiation, but this is going to be a difficult conversation. No one's getting fired today, but if we don't correct some things we're going to talk about today, we're going to have to move towards that direction. And then you say, here's the things. Now here's a program, and we're going to meet, and here's the things I expect from you, and we need these things done by this date. And I'm going to check with you a couple times, and then by that date, we're going to look and see, did you do it? And then if it's something fairly simple and they correct it, show to work on time, or they get their sales calls up, or whatever the issue is. I don't know what it is. Or, you're talking to someone in a way you shouldn't be talking to them, and that kind of stuff. Then, and then they either do it or they don't. If they don't do it, then you go, okay, now we're going to have another difficult conversation, and now it's going to get a little hotter. And nothing is going to happen today, but we're probably one meeting away from you not working here. So we're just real clear, real kind, real direct. These meetings are about this long. We're not going on for 2 hours with a bunch of emotion. These are 10-minute meeting. It's just going to tell you, here's what we're doing, and this is not thing. And so I'll help you. I'm here to support you. I'm going to work on, and then we would come in if they, and say, all right, now we're going to put you on a 90-day plan. And during this 90 days, you and I are going to meet every other day, and we're going to work on every one of these things. And at the end of that 90 days, you're going to have solved this problem permanently. We're never going to revisit it again, or we will be done. Or if you don't want to enter into this very intense 90-day period, here's a severance package today. If you would rather do that, if you say, my time at Ramsey's done, here's a severance package today. I would say when that's put on the table, probably 70% of the time they take the severance and walk out the door. Because you've already talked about whatever it is up to this point, and they either think they can turn it and want to turn it and really want to engage to stay and be part of the team, or they're like, screw this. I'll just take the money and go. And we would rather give them a little money and not have to deal with because you're taking up a leader's productivity too through that whole time to try to make a save. And the number of people that we save at that point is fairly low. Almost all of them are saved prior to that conversation that starts a 90-day plan. But when you get there, it's a fairly low save ratio. But we'll try it. I mean, we want to give everybody a chance. Because I got fired one time when I was 20. I was working for this company, and this guy was he was a character. And he was one of the leaders. He wasn't the owner of the company. And I was doing site locations for a company called Mr. Transmission. It's out of business now. I think there's a few of them still open, but the actual franchise operation's gone. And the guy that I reported to, I was doing real estate right out of college, doing site locations for him. I worked there for 3 whole months. And he fired me. And he came in my office one day and just started, you little effer, F, your mother's an effer, and all these effers and all this stuff. And he's yelling and screaming. And he goes, get a box and get your ass out of here, all this. And I'm like, what did I do? And he goes, it doesn't matter. You're fired. Get out of here. And honestly, that was 40-something years ago. I still don't know what I did. I probably did it. I probably deserved to be fired. I don't know what I did. I mean, I wasn't like the champion character, wonderful person or something. So it's very possible. I just don't know what I got fired for. And so that scarred me. And I promised when we opened Ramsey that if someone left, they would always know why. They would never be surprised. And they would always know why. Not surprised is, you're not getting fired today, but we got to fix this. 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 They're not going to be surprised. And they're always going to know exactly why. And so it's not unusual at Ramsey for someone to, I've heard this multiple times. They tell their spouse on Monday morning or Tuesday morning, this is probably going to be my last day, because they know when they come in that they're done. Because it's been so clear and gradual. It's on a gradient up to that. And then they don't feel, their dignity is not stolen. And I remember, they're not long meetings. When you do finally say, today's your last day, that's a 6-minute meeting. It's like, we've worked on this up to this point. We know we love you, but this is not working. And we've talked about it and talked about it and talked about it. So the decision's been made. Today's your last day at Ramsey. And what I want you to do is, I've got a person, my HR director sitting outside. They're going to walk with you to your car and collect your fobs and stuff and collect your computers, and your access is already shut down. And then they'll also make a time for you to come back in late in the day or after hours to sign the paperwork and to get your stuff from your desk. Is there anything you need right this second before you go home? And that's how long it takes. And they're in their car 10 minutes after we open, and they're on their way home. And they don't have to do a walk of shame back to their team and clean out their stuff and have a box and go through like something from Office Space or something. And so they come back later. We're not trying to hurt somebody. Yeah. It just didn't work. And, but, people are funny. I mean, the stuff that people come up with. I'm not going to surprise them, though. And I never have. And I've never fired anybody angry while I was angry. I've been angry, but I've never fired someone while I was angry. I go home, talk to Sharon, think about it, come back in the next morning, and then by then it's almost usually kind of humorous how stupid the whole thing is, and they just can't work here anymore.
I just learned a lot from that segment. Thank you. Yeah, I did. And Dave, we're wrapping up the interview here, but you are the money guy. So, last question: where should people be putting their money in today to invest?
First thing is, you should never put money in something you don't understand. Don't put it because Dave Ramsey said do it or anybody else said do it. The second thing is, if you're investing, that means you have a long view of money. You're putting it in something, you're going to leave it alone a long time. We did at Ramsey Research, a research team, an airtight study, the largest study of millionaires ever done in North America. It's in the book, last bestseller I had, called Baby Steps Millionaires. White papers in the back of it on the research. The research is airtight. We had another company outside from New York look over our shoulders on our methodology to make sure that the research process was not confirmation bias, that it was detail airtight, because we knew that the left-wing communist group would not like the results of where millionaires come from, because they have an anarchist, communist, wealth equality agenda that's absolute bullcrap. And we knew that would come at us, so we had to make it airtight. So if you disagree with the conclusions of this study that is hard data that are known as facts, you would be what's known as wrong, in other words. And so one of the things we found was that 89% of America's millionaires, that's 9 out of 10, are not millionaires because of inherited money. The great lie is that the rich have all the money, and so the poor little people can't get any money. This is the greatest country in the history of the world, the greatest economic system in the history of the world for the little man to get ahead. Mm-hmm. I'm so stupid, I had to do it twice. So it's possible. I promise you it's possible. 79% inherited precisely zero, 5% inherited a small amount, like $5,000 from their grandmother, which mathematically makes it impossible for that to have caused them to be a millionaire. And another 5% inherited a substantial amount after they were already millionaires, like Maybe they got 250 grand when dad died, but they were already worth 2.5 million. So it didn't cause them to be a millionaire. So 79, 5, and 5 is 89. That's an example of that study. Now, in that study, the sad thing was the process that people had used and the demographic data, the breakdown of wealth of who had become millionaires, again, they'd done it themselves, they were not inherited money, was unbelievably boring. There's just zero sex appeal. It's just devastatingly stupid. And it's just, here's what they did. The average person in there had, now this is the first $1 to $5 million of net worth. This is not somebody worth 100 million. It's not a billion. A billion's 1,000 million. That's people with jets and 7 cars, okay? But a millionaire drives a Toyota, okay? And here's what they did. They have a $600,000, $800,000 house that's paid for. And they have 800, 900,000 in their 401k because they've been putting money in mutual funds in their 401k for 15 years. And the company matches, and it's in a Roth. And they did some Roth IRAs, and they had retirement investing and a paid-for house. And the two together was $1.5 million to $2 million, 1.6 million, 1.4 million, whatever. Like 80-something% of them looked like that. It was ridiculous.
Wow.
So pay off your house, put money in a 401k and mutual funds. And that's your first $1 million to $5 million. And it's like all of them. It wasn't like statistical. I mean, when you're doing statistical analysis on stuff like that, if you can get something at 56%, like a poll on politics, I mean, you get 48 to 42 to 52, you get a 56% of the vote, you had a landslide, right? We didn't have 56% of anything. All this stuff came in the 80 percentile.
Wow.
And it's like all of them. So it was not only statistically significant, it was ridiculous. It was actually fact. And so, yeah, put money in a good growth stock mutual fund that has a long track record and fill up your 401k with that, take the match, do a Roth IRA and do the same thing and pay off your real estate. And some of them then would start buying other real estate. There were some other cool stories in there. One guy was worth $5 million and he had 100% of it in farmland. He was a dirt farmer in Kansas. He had a big farm in Kansas, and he'd buy a few acres, and he'd buy a few acres, and he'd pay cash for it, and he had like $10 million worth of dirt. And that was all he had. He didn't have any money. He just had a bunch of dirt. But he had a $10 million net worth. It was great. But that was the weird ones. That was kind of fun, but most of them are a guy that, he's a mid-level. 33% of them, 1/3, never made 6 figures.
Wow.
Number 1 career was engineer. Number 2 was accountant. Get this. Number 3, teacher.
No kidding.
Number 4, business executive. Number 5, lawyer. Medical doctors didn't even make the top 5.
No kidding.
They're notoriously bad with money and arrogant with their money, but almost like a music artist or something. But they're either really good or they're really bad, like the music people, and so or actors or the athletes, the same thing, all that. But it was very interesting. And what we figured out was, okay, what have they got in common? Engineers, accountants, teachers, business executive, lawyer. They all are process people. You have to use a process to build a bridge or it falls. And it's a set of principles you don't get to make up. It's no creativity involved. You got to do the right thing or it falls. There's one set of math. You don't get to, that's a new way of doing it. No, that's the way you build the bridge. Accounting, there's not 4 methods of accounting. There's 1. There's accounting done right and accounting done wrong. Teachers, lesson plan. They often were married to policemen. That was very interesting. Law enforcement. Number 4, lawyer. Business person, they're running a business, they're, have to have a system. Lawyers, there's a system of law, even though we all laugh about it. But, you do certain things in a courtroom a certain way or the judge puts you out. You don't have 6 different ways to try a case. There's a set of standards. It's a process. These are all process people. So what they did is they figured out the money process and they did it, which was save and invest, live on less than you make and pay off your house. And they just work the process. And so if you're if you have a master's degree in art appreciation, you're at a disadvantage because that's all creative, subjective, not objective, and you're not process driven. So you can do it, but you got to adhere. You have to submit yourself to a proven process, and you don't get to make up your own version. And that's who wins. And so my investments, I've studied wealthy people for 30 years. They invest in things they understand, like the guy with the dirt. He understood dirt, so he bought dirt. And they avoid debt by and large. Not all of them, but most of them. And their investments are usually fairly boring. It's not some super sophisticated family partnership double backflip trust. That none of them have that. That's something on a movie or something. These guys just put money in their 401k, paid off their house. I mean, that's what I do. I buy mutual funds and I buy real estate that I pay cash for. And I own Ramsey. Those are my 3 assets. And you've been on my farm, you've been on my house, but I mean, everything, we just pay cash for it. And this campus, I pay cash for it, everything. And I love real estate. I'm buying a piece right now. I'm working on LOI today, letter of intent today on a nice piece of commercial. I love real estate, but I pay cash for it. And I put money in mutual funds because I believe in the American economy. Mutual funds are 90 to 200 of America's best and brightest companies that are growing. I just don't think you can beat that. And so I do. And that's why I don't do the fad stuff. And I'm not taking a poll. I went broke. I don't care what your opinion is. I'm going to do this. And I don't need to impress anybody with how cool I am because I've ceased to be cool a long time ago. So that's how we do it.
Pretty damn cool.
That's how we do it, dude.
Thank you. Well, Dave, there's just so much knowledge and wisdom in here. I mean, everything from, how you run your business, how to be a father, how to be a good husband. I mean, just hiring, firing, all kinds of wisdom in this. And I really appreciate you coming on. And
I'm honored. I've been wanting to do it a while. I'm sorry it took so long to get around to it.
No.
I treasure our friendship too.
Me too.
And I'm enjoying watching your spiritual journey. It's a lot of fun.
Thank you.
I'm real proud of you.
Thank you. Well, God bless.
You too, sir.
No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.